Well, guys, we are back for another episode of the Liberal Asshole Show, episode 55. So, what are today's topics?
Sorry. Bad time for a yawn. Russo-Ukraine war update. Liz Cheney's plan to stop Trump. Biden building Trump's wall. Kansas goes pro-choice. Ron DeSantis being a big baby. Jon Stewart destroys Republicans. And China molding over Taiwan again.
Oh boy, a whole bunch of wine we have to deal with. So, of course, since it's been 4 weeks since we last covered it, here's an update on the Russo-Ukraine war. Now, for any of you who didn't see the haven't seen on the last episode, go check that out, because the map really has not changed that much. I just posted earlier between the two back-to-back, and they really have not changed whatsoever. I just looked at them right now. Unfortunately, though, Russia has seemed to have gained more, like in the Donbass area. But there are parts where Ukraine has pushed back a little bit, more in the Kherson area.
A little bit in the northeast, while Russia have taken a little bit of the mid-east.
Yeah, but by and large, though, it pretty much is a stalemate right now. Like, the amount of territory Russia's gained in the Donbass in, like, the last 4 weeks is so small, I could probably walk that entire distance within an hour. Like, that's how small we're talking about. So, it really is right now a stalemate. So I'm starting to wonder if maybe we should cover this even less frequently now, since it's now becoming a stalemate. Since, remember, we used to cover every...
Maybe just leave it until the war's over.
Or if something
even if that means you're waiting 3 to 4 years.
Or if something serious pops up.
Yeah.
Because this is getting like a little bit much of a stalemate right now, because nothing's really changed. And of course, I also looked up the casualty counts according to Kiev Independent, which of course I know shouldn't trust it. But from what it said, Russia might have suffered up to 43,000 casualties now.
That would be wild if true. But also remember that this is a campaign of genocide. Because remember that the Russian propaganda that a lot of people on the right and on the left, I put the left in quotation marks, they believe that that Ukraine is a Nazi terrorist state and that all Ukrainians are Nazis and therefore they deserve to be genocided.
Yep.
But also remember they're claiming that Ukraine and the Nazi terrorist state of America have been using biolabs to create bioweapons to target Russian DNA.
Hell yeah, Harry's used that excuse on me before.
Yep. Has was the originator of that conspiracy theory. He literally said that when he was in his argument with Jacob Hickey against Dylan Bum and Des Tiny.
Oh God, I remember that.
That gives you my opinion of all four of them. There are bits and bobs. I want this Ukrainian documentary to fully come out and then actually watch it. This is a ballsy thing that Dylan Burns did. But that'll probably be about all I'd watch of him lately.
Yeah, he's pretty much sucked. All four of them pretty much sucked.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I mean, it says something when out of those four, Dylan Burns is the best. I mean, Dylan Burns is a fairly stock standard neo-lib who is a little bit more progressive than on social issues, but that is more progressive on social issues, but that's about it. Then there's Destiny, who's now just a right-wing dipshit. Then there's Jacob Hickey, who I swear worships Stalin and claims to be a leftist, but believes far-right conspiracy theories. A lot of them anti-Semitic in nature, and has. The less said about that unhinged moron, the better.
Yeah. So yeah, right now it looks like the war is pretty much a stalemate, so I'm wondering in 2 weeks or not if we should not cover unless something like really serious pops up, because there's, like, these last 2 months there's not been really much to talk about since there's no major gains or anything. So, just figured we'd post a little bit of an update on it, maybe for the last time for a while, but we'll see about that. But anyways, now, on to the next topic. What do you want to talk about?
Liz Cheney's plan to stop Trump.
Okay, so we got all the topics coming up. Thankfully, all have videos, so make it much easier and all that. But anyways, of course, Liz Cheney is a congressman from, Congress or Senator, but from Wyoming, and she's like one of the few Republicans that's actually trying to stop Trump, basically, like, acknowledges that he lost 2020, and he did do January 6th and all that, and of course she's gotten so much shit out of it. And, as Kyle just covered, there's a wonder and curiosity if she might be running in 2024 to maybe prevent Trump from winning, ? So, let's go watch that video.
So Chris Cillizza is CNN's resident bird brain, as I call him. 98% of the time he has a take that makes me not only recoil in disgust, but also laugh. So I saw this video pop up the other day. What Liz Cheney's political future may hold beyond 2022. So I saw that, and I was like, oh boy, I gotta watch this video. And honestly, I was going into it expecting, like, let me watch it to see how dumb it is, so I can then show you guys and rip it. Because it seems like is Liz Cheney going to be the next president of the United States? It seems like he's going in that direction because his brain is poisoned from conventional wisdom and liberal elitism. But to my shock, he actually makes a really good point in here that highlights some wheels in motion behind the scenes that are inevitable. I think they're inevitable. So I'll share the theory with you, and then we'll talk about it here. This is really interesting and important, and it's everything for 2024. So let's watch.
So the first time I recorded today's episodes, I didn't wear a microphone, which made the sound less good. Yeah, whoops. Liz Cheney didn't come...
What was the point of putting another video? Come on, man. Nobody's here for your personality. You are not one whose charisma attracts people.
Right out and say she expects to lose her primary next month. But in an interview with CNN's Jake Tapper on Sunday, it was pretty easy to read between the lines of the Wyoming Republicans' answers.
I am working hard here in Wyoming to earn every vote. But I will also say this. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say things that aren't true about the election. My opponents are doing that, certainly simply for the purpose of getting elected.
And
another thing, too, is I think coming up soon, she's actually facing the primary to try and take her out. Unfortunately for her, she actually might lose because she actually acknowledges that Trump lost and did January 6th, and the Republicans in Wyoming are mauling over it, which is funny. Which is funny because on policies, she agrees with every single one of what they like, and that's why she's a piece of shit, and she should not be liked by liberals in this country because she's an awful piece of shit. But because she dared to be correct on like one thing or two things, Republicans fucking hate her, and Democrats unfortunately love her. Fucking pathetic.
At another point, she said this.
If I have to choose between maintaining a seat in the House of Representatives or protecting the constitutional republic and ensuring the American people know the truth about Donald Trump, I'm going to choose the Constitution and the truth every single day.
Now, pressed by Tapper whether her service as vice chair of the House's January 6th Select Committee will have been worth it even if she loses next month, Cheney responded,
I believe that my work on this committee is the single most important thing I've ever done professionally.
Now, if all that sounds to you like Cheney is framing the August 16th primary as a sort of fait accompli, and is not the end of a story,
11 more days to go
broader narrative,
before
well,
primary.
you, sir, or ma'am, are correct. The simple fact is that Cheney is very unlikely to beat Harriet Hageman in next month's Wyoming primary. Hageman has the support of, among others, former President Donald Trump, as well as a number of top Republican leaders, including House...
Matter of fact, now that I remember, I think she was outright censured by the Wyoming Republicans. Yep. Like, they really took her down hardcore.
Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. Cheney,
I remember that,
detested by Republicans who swear field.
It's pretty bad that they're actually trying to get rid of her, not because she's a piece of shit, but she dared to actually live in reality for just a wee little bit. Pretty pathetic.
To Trump. And in Wyoming, that's a majority of Republicans. While Cheney has reportedly been trying to recruit Democrats to cross party lines and support her, and some undoubtedly will, it's very hard to see that making a real difference in the outcome of this race. Simply put, Cheney looked...
I think that's true because, and you see this too with like Manchin and Sinema, they have like a higher approval rating among Republicans than they do among Democrats. But
because they are Republicans with a D next to their name.
By the same thing's happening here with Liz Cheney. She has a higher approval rating among Democrats than she does among Republicans because of all the January 6th stuff and how high profile is and how...
Yeah, which is really pathetic because, like I said, she doesn't agree with Democrats on pretty much anything.
No,
it's
she
just
doesn't.
January
She's
6th.
a
That's literally it.
She's a Trumpist that acknowledges that Trump is horrible.
Yeah, that's literally it.
The election. That's literally it.
But that's enough to make Democrats
She
wet.
wants a fascist dictatorship.
how forthright she is with her position on it.
She wants,
but are they actually
she
going to vote
is
for
the
her?
terrorist.
A
Because
handful,
all of them
tiny
are.
percentage, but
Yep.
not nearly enough to make the difference. So she's kind of expecting to lose at this point, but that's where it gets interesting.
Looks likely to lose, and lose big, and she knows it. Sidebar. Crazy things happen. Polls can be wrong. It ain't over till it's over, and all that. But to be clear, all signs president in 2024. Watch.
I haven't really, at this point, I have not made a decision about 2024. But
So now the media is trying to bolster her and make it a thing of like, are you going to run in 2024? Are you going to take the Republican Party back for the forces of good, which 93% of the time still agree with Trump? That's the media line. So, and that is a very dumb line. But hold your horses.
I do think as we look towards the next presidential election, as I said, I believe that our nation stands on the edge of an abyss, and I do believe that we all have to really think very seriously about the dangers we face and the threats we face, and we have to elect serious candidates.
That pretty much tells you everything you need to know about Liz Cheney in 2024. She isn't an announced candidate yet. But when you hear a politician talking about the country standing on the edge of an abyss and the need to elect serious candidates, well, it doesn't take an astrophysicist, thankfully, to figure out what's really going on here.
Maybe, maybe not. Maybe, maybe not. He's trying to say, oh, she's definitely running. 50-50. But even if she doesn't, she has a plan.
The real question at this point seems to be then not whether Cheney runs, she sounds to all the world like that decision is at least mostly made, but rather whether she can have any sort of actual impact in the 2024 race. If Cheney runs as a Republican, it will undoubtedly be a very tough road for her. Trump is the clear frontrunner in most polling conducted on the 2024 presidential primary and seems very likely to run again. Florida Governor Ron Desantis is seen as the only serious alternative to Trump, at least at the moment, and he's positioned himself as an advocate of Trumpism just without Trump. There's no candidate garnering any serious support in hypothetical 2024 polls who's running expressly against Trump and the actions he took and didn't take during his 4 years in office. The people, aside from Cheney, who are signaling an interest in running that sort of campaign, term-limited Maryland Governor Larry Hogan is probably the most high-profile example other than Cheney.
Hilarious. Larry Hogan's family doesn't even know who he is.
They barely
He's a
registered
piece of
polls
shit.
on the race. Could Cheney somehow coalesce the anti-Trump vote within the
Larry
Republican Party?
Hogan doesn't even know who Larry Hogan is.
Yeah, because he's a cancel-riddle retard.
Sure, possible. But even if she was to do so, there's scant evidence that that block of voters comprise anything close to a majority of likely Republican
Oh boy,
primary
here's
voters.
the rain.
So far, all true.
The other and more plausible, I think, path for Cheney is to run as an independent in the 2024 presidential race. Assuming Trump is the Republican nominee, which is a safe assumption, such a candidacy could skim off enough votes in swing states and nationally to potentially hamstring the former president's chances of winning. Presumably.
Whoa. That's a serious point right there. Now, if you're still skeptical, I hear you. But wait until the thing you hear at the end here from Cheney.
Cheney, who is a conservative on most issues other than Donald Trump, would appeal more to Republicans than Democrats in a general election. But even under that scenario, Cheney would function as a spoiler, trying to keep Trump from the White House rather than as a viable candidate to be elected president herself, which, given what she told Tapper Sunday, might be enough for her.
I'm fighting hard. No matter what happens on August 16th, I'm going to wake up on August 17th and continue to fight hard to ensure Donald Trump is never anywhere close to the Oval Office ever again.
Whoa. Run that back one more time. And again, think of the theory that Saliza just put out there.
Enough for her.
I'm fighting hard. No matter what happens on August 16th, I'm going to wake up on August 17th and continue to fight hard to ensure Donald Trump is never anywhere close to the Oval Office ever again.
No matter what happens on August 16th, her election, if I win or lose, she's expecting to lose. She almost certainly is going to lose. I'll wake up on August 17th and make sure Donald Trump never gets anywhere near the White House again. That's a very strong statement with a lot of conviction. And so, look, now let me get to my theory, because Saliza's a little too concrete in his proposal here. He might be right. But here's what I'm definitely convinced of at this point. If it ain't Liz Cheney, it's going to be some other anti-Trump Republican running as an independent and then the Republican establishment is going to secretly tweak some of the rules to give that independent a higher vote share, and all that independent would need to do is take 5% away from Trump, assuming he's the nominee, and it guarantees a Democratic victory in 2024. And at this point, I have no doubt that the Republican establishment would rather have almost anybody but Trump, because he crossed too many people in there. He did. He crossed too many. They are, and that's why, if you notice, there's no response over the January 6th stuff. None of the elected Republicans are talking about the January 6th stuff. They're not mounting a defense for Trump. Why? Because secretly behind the scenes they're like, boy, we hope this works to get him out of the conversation, get him out of the national dialogue, take away his chances of being president again, because they all want to be the next guy. They all want to be the president. And he stepped on too many toes. So, what his theory tells me, I think his theory is mostly correct. If it ain't Liz Cheney running as an independent to try to take away 5%, which would guarantee a Democratic victory, it'll be Mike Pence running as an independent, or some other anti-Trump Republican that has a high enough profile to try to take away 5%, and they're going to try to sink him no matter what.
I don't think they would succeed,
That's what that
though,
tells
at
me.
all.
So there is an evil genius, depending on your perspective, or just a genius plan being put into place by the Republican establishment. And because they've decided, we're done with Trump. We're done with him. So now here's where the conversation gets a little complicated, though. And Crystal made this point to me when I was talking about this to her. She's not convinced that if Liz Cheney runs as an independent or some other anti-Trump Republican runs as an independent, she's not convinced that that candidate would pull more from Republicans than Democrats. I tend to disagree. I think it is more, they would pull more from Republicans than they would from Democrats. Because, again, I think it's the same thing as like the Manchin and Sinema thing where they have a higher approval rating among Republicans, but would they actually vote for them in the final consideration? No. I think it's the same thing. I think, yeah.
And,
maybe,
of course, who knows if Wyoming
Liz
has
Cheney,
closed primaries either.
If she were to run, her vote count would be 20 or 30% Democratic,
Yep,
but the overwhelming majority would be
exactly.
Republican, and that would be taking more from Trump and the Republicans, and there'd be consequences to that. So I actually think his theory's correct. But I think he's a little off in the particulars. He's too sure it's definitely going to be Cheney running. But they are planning some sort of independent candidate that they'll try to bolster in subtle ways to take out Trump. Because I think the Republican establishment is done with him. So we'll see. So in other words, look, I thought he was going to make the argument of like, Liz Cheney's going to run and maybe she'll win. I thought he was that dumb. Nah, he's a lot closer on this one. He's making a decent point on this one. Again, my only disagreement with him is that if it ain't Cheney, it's going to be somebody else, and she's going to be involved behind the scenes trying to dot all the I's and cross all the T's to get this person the 5% that they need to have the outcome on the race that they want. Hey, y'all, do me a favor.
So, yeah, we got to see about that theory. Maybe Liz Cheney running to prevent Trump from winning in 2024.
Possibly. I don't know how successful it would be when she only appears in like half the bloody states.
Yeah, I don't think she would succeed at stopping him either way. The only thing that I think could actually stop Trump from winning is if Ron DeSantis right now, or Trump dies or does something that's so egregious that he just loses favor and like makes Ron DeSantis more likely. Like, he's really the only one right now that probably has any chance of beating him outside of Trump screwing up, dying, or decide not to run or anything like that.
Or going to jail.
And I also don't think, even if Cheney did ran as if she ran as a primary challenger against Trump to win the Republican nomination, or if she, literally her or anyone else in the Republican establishment decided to run like an independent to like keep Trump from winning, I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. Like, she is,
No, it's not.
like, a lot of these Republican establishment people don't realize you're not liked. The base doesn't like you. They like Trump. That's why they chose him in 2016.
GQP, another party of Trump, and they want to take over America and kill everyone
Yeah.
that isn't them,
Yeah, like,
and even kill a lot of people that are them.
yeah, you're not going to succeed in this one, I don't think. But who knows? They're still 2 years away, so anything can happen. Alright, so on to the next topic, which is...
That will be Biden building Trump's wall for Donald Trump.
Yes! So, once again, Republicans and conservatives being idiots again. So, recently, Biden is actually building up patches in Trump's border wall. Which, yes, he is building up the wall, as he said he wasn't gonna do, or anything of the sort. And, of course, you would think Republicans would give him praise for this. But no, he's just opening the borders and mass immigration and all that stupid BS. So now, let's go watch Kyle cover this one.
All right, so we got one of these stories here that sort of flips the entire political world on its head and confuses everybody under the sun. At least people who don't follow this stuff closely. In the New York Post,
that is that
White
Joe
House
Biden is building Trump's wall for him.
border wall after Biden pledged not to build anymore. The White House has completed...
Yeah, guys, remember that. When Biden ran 2020, he said he would not build up any more of the border wall. Yet, what's this right here?
More sections of former President Donald Trump's border wall, with the Department of Homeland Security closing 4 gaps in the barrier near Yuma, Arizona, that have become a major migrant thoroughfare? No, I don't think I've ever seen that word before. DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas authorized Customs and Border Protection Thursday to seal the openings near the Morelos Dam just west of downtown Yuma. The department said the area presented safety and life hazard risks for migrants attempting to cross into the United States, where there's a risk of drownings and injuries from falls. This area also poses a life and safety risk to first responders and agents.
It's just a reason to justify massacring people coming over the border.
That runs north to south along the Colorado River before turning on an east-west track at the California-Arizona state line. Border officials have reported 235,230 migrant encounters in the Border Patrol Yuma's sector since October 1st of last year. Only the Del Rio and Rio Grande Valley sectors have reported more encounters in the same period. I guess you have a picture of one of the gaps in the wall near the dam. President Biden ordered a halt to border wall construction shortly after taking office in January 2021. While the move was praised by liberal activists, it also left holes in the barrier that critics, including Biden's fellow Democrats, say have been exploited by individual migrants and human traffickers smuggling groups of people across the border. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre repeatedly insisted Friday that the Biden administration isn't finishing the border wall, which Trump declared a national emergency in 2019 to build before later winning congressional appropriations for the project. Quote, "Why is the Biden administration building a border wall in Arizona?" Fox News correspondent Peter Doocy asked Jean-Pierre, I don't even know how to say it, at her regular briefing. "We're not finishing the wall," she answered. "We are cleaning up the mess the prior administration left behind in their failed attempt to build a wall." Come on, man. You got to hit us with a better line than this. This is nonsense. But President Biden, when he was a candidate, said, "There will not be another foot of wall constructed in my administration."
Oh, look at that.
And
Another
here he
lie.
is now
by the Democrat in August
another lie.
2020. So what
And
changed?
here he is completing
"We are not
Trump's
finishing the
wall.
wall," she repeated. Ducey went on, "If walls work in that part of Arizona, is this the administration trying to get migrants to cross somewhere else, like in Texas? What's the point?" She replied, "We are not finishing the wall. We are cleaning up the mess the Prime Administration made. We are trying to save lives. This is what the Prime Administration left behind that we are now cleaning up by finishing the wall."
We're blaming Trump for this.
We are not finishing the wall.
Of course.
You are
Finishing.
finishing.
Everything
We are not
bad is the
finishing the
fault
wall.
of Trump.
She again
You
interjected.
are working on
By
finishing
filling
the
in
wall,
the
you
wall.
idiot.
By filling in the wall, is this racist? Ducey asked cheekily. Because in 2019, when former guy Trump was proposing a wall, you said that it was his racist wall. So how is this any different? "I'm not even sure you know how you get from your first question to this question and that you just asked me," she said. "A border wall is an ineffective use of taxpayer dollars. Just recently, Customs and Border Patrol reported that new bollard fencing along the southwest border was breached 3,272 times between fiscal year 2019 and 2021, requiring $2.6 million in repairs. It's ineffective. We are not finishing the wall. We are cleaning up the mess the last administration made."
But you are building up the wall. You're
Building
adding
the wall,
sections
you
and such
fucking
like that.
idiots.
You are. And also to the racist point, no, the wall itself isn't racist. But a lot of people that do advocate for the wall do have racist intentions for it. That's both things are true.
A day earlier, Senator Mark Kelly, a Democrat of Arizona, praised DHS for filling in the openings. For too long, the Morelos Dam area has been an operational challenge for the Border Patrol agents to properly secure the border and keep our community safe, Kelly said in a statement. I'm glad that the Department of Homeland Security has listened to Arizona and is going to close these gaps, Kelly added. This is a step forward, and I'll keep working to ensure that Arizona has the tools needed for a secure and orderly process at the border, including fencing and barriers where they make sense.
Of course.
Yeah, they're never going to be acknowledged.
This goes on a little bit longer, but you guys get the point of it. So, geez, what is there to say about this? There's a lot to say about this. So, first of all, the argument now from Republicans, as you can see from Peter Doocy, is like trying to call Biden out on the hypocrisy. Hey, you said you're against the wall, you said it's racist, now you're building it. That's a fair point.
Yeah.
To call him out on the hypocrisy. But also, shouldn't you be praising what he's doing? Because you...
Yeah, this is the main point why I wanted to play this video. For anyone that's watching that supports the wall being built, I want to hear it from you. I support Biden doing this. Biden's correct. I don't want to hear ever again from you that the borders are wide open, there's mass immigration, all that, uncontrollable and all that. No. All false. All false. Biden, from what I've read up, Biden's actually done more deportations than even Trump did, and he's not even been in office for 2 years yet. Just like Obama was the deporter-in-chief. Like, the Democrats are
now Biden's the ultimate deporter-in-chief. He's literally, he's probably trying to deport every single undocumented immigrant in the entire country.
So yeah,
that is if they're not, if half of them aren't murdered first.
So like Biden and Obama and all them, these guys are hardcore anti-immigration. Yet you guys won't acknowledge it when the facts don't back up what you like hearing. So I don't want to ever hear it again that open borders, mass migration, all that. No, Biden is anti-immigration pretty much in this regard. And he's trying to build up the wall. So I want to hear nothing but praise, and that's final. Do you understand?
You guys support this. You guys like this. You guys
no, they don't, because they're evil.
And they're stupid.
Shouldn't Republican politicians and Republican voters across the country take a moment to say, hey, thank you, President Biden. We agree with you. This is our policy. You are now proposing our policy. You're going to enact our policies. So that's what's up. So, in other words, all the stuff about Biden, far-left, Democrat, communist, Marxist, socialist, extremist, listening to Bernie Sanders, puppet strings, bro. Isn't that obviously bullshit? Isn't that obviously bullshit? See, like, if a Republican politician decided, I'm going to fight for Medicare for all, and they substantively really are fighting for Medicare for all, yeah, one of the things I might do is to say, well, here you are in October of 2018 saying, you know, Medicare for all is a communist plot that's trying to kill your grandma, and now you're fighting for it. Hypocrite much? I might make that point, but that would be a side point to the main point of like, bro, that's what's up. Thank you for supporting Medicare for all. This is all we want, is the government to represent us. That's from my perspective. So again, if you're on the right and you're, you know, tough on immigration or whatever, shouldn't you look at this and say, maybe Biden isn't what I thought he was?
Yeah.
Maybe he's not some sort of far leftist. Maybe if anything, he's center right. Maybe he's like,
yeah, guys, Biden's not this far left POS. We wish he was even close to the things that you all say he is, but he's not.
That would be awesome.
He's a center right Republican, if anything. He's not a progressive. So, like I said, I don't want to ever hear again about he's some far left POS. He's not, and that's fine.
Because that's how they fire up their racist Nazi base.
And they're retarded.
Like a diet Republican. But they're not going to say that. Because they're not honest. Because nobody's honest. Well, that's actually not true, because I would bet you that people on the left flank of the Democratic Party are going to go after Biden for this. Now, I haven't seen any of it yet, to be fair, but I bet they are going to go after him for this. Because there are some people in the left flank of the Democratic Party who sincerely believe that the wall's an abomination, it's racist, it separates us when we should come together, etc., 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 and so they'll go after him for this. But look, guys, the open secret is, if you've been following this stuff closely, Biden has pursued a number of Trump's border policies. We talked about it a number of times. Title 42, you know, deporting people because we're in a pandemic, so there's no due process. You're an immigrant, you come in this country, you're gone. And, you know, courts have ruled, I think, both ways on that, but ultimately I think they ruled that it is not allowed to do that. Remain in Mexico is another policy that Biden embraced. So certainly on the issue of the border, he's very Trumpian. Even though his rhetoric when he ran, his rhetoric from the White House might be a little more soft and a little more sympathetic and a little more pro-immigrant. In terms of the actual policies he's implementing, very, very similar to Trump. Very similar to Trump. And look, the other point is, and this is unavoidable, the White House press spokesperson, I understand your job is paid liar. You're supposed to be better at it. Because reading this exchange, god damn it, it's just so stupid. We're not finishing the wall. Okay, so is the Weasley way to get out of this to say, no, we're not finishing the wall. There's certain areas where it's high traffic where we're filling in the border wall, but there are areas where we're not building the border wall, so we're not finishing it. We're just sort of adding to it a little bit.
You might as well be finishing it.
Okay, but at the same time,
that
still flies in the face of
we
what
already know that you guys secretly loved Trump's border wall.
That's a very Weasley way to get out of it.
You might as well have just
Weasley way to get out of it.
Let past it.
You're finding a technicality to get out of it. I'm not building a full border wall on
let
every
it-
mile of the
should have let
southern
Trump
border,
just
so
build
we're
his
not
stupid
finishing the
wall.
wall. Yeah, but you're building. You're extending it. You're building parts of it in high traffic areas, which means you agree with the logic of the wall.
Yeah, and you're building it up, so I don't want to hear it anymore.
Look, I really think immigration is one of those issues where there's almost always bipartisan agreement among presidents of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. That's why Obama was the deporter-in-chief. He broke the record on deportation. And again, this is a guy who had more soft rhetoric on immigration, but he pursued policies that are kind of right-wing. Biden's doing the same thing. Trump did the same thing. So this is one of those areas where there's very little difference between the parties. And it's just funny that the perception of that nationally, and certainly the portrayal of that in media, is nothing like the reality. All you hear is that Democrats support open borders, and Republicans want safety and security. That's all you hear. And now you guys know and this is why I always say print media is better than TV media, because TV media really has a lot of false notions that they put out there, whereas print usually is a lot more accurate in what they say. But now you know the dominant narrative is garbage. Ever since
what do you guys say about Biden building up Trump's wall? That Democrats refuse to acknowledge, and Republicans refuse to acknowledge too.
Yeah, of course he's completing the wall. The Democrats should have just fucking let Trump build his stupid fucking wall. They hate him. They hate and want to genocide immigrants just as much as the Republicans do, even if they have to be secretive about it.
Alright, so now, on to the next topic.
Which will be Kansas going pro-choice.
So anyways, as we've been covering since Roe v. Wade was overruled, all the terrible things that have been happening to women across the country that had certain states where abortion's now been banned. There are so many videos I wanted to post recently about it, but there was just too many of them to even pick one of them to talk about, so maybe in the future. But actually some good news for once. Just this week, there was primaries done in Kansas, and Republicans sneakily tried to put this in where they were going to have a referendum where people in Kansas were going to vote to possibly allow the state to ban abortion, because right now they can't, because it's actually in their constitution that abortion is legal in some regard. I can't remember how long it is. So the Republicans were hoping that, hey, a primary, especially a primary with nothing else at the moment being run, that the turnout will be so low that we'll win easily, because that is historically true. When turnout's low, Republicans win. So they designed a date to purposely get what they want. Well, to even my surprise, Kansas not only vote against banning abortion, but they voted in a landslide. They got 61% said no to change the Constitution.
Bloody awesome.
Freaking, and the thing is, this isn't a blue state. This isn't even a swing state. Kansas is a red state to its core. Trump won the state by 15 points in 2020. And here it is by over 20 points saying no, abortion needs to stay legal in our state, which is very base. And of course, like we mentioned before, and of course, this is going to be funny too when we watch David Dole's video, because conservatives and Fox were molded about this. But like we talked about before, when it comes to polls, only if last I checked, it was 19% of Americans even want to ban abortion completely. It's a fringe issue. And yet Republicans still insist on trying to force on this when they are a fringe minority. even there were so many crossover votes where Republicans still vote for Republican politicians, but voted to make sure abortion's still legal in Kansas. So now, let's watch David Dole's video, and conservatives mulled some more. And here we go.
Yes. They're molding especially hard at the moment. They're always molding, so...
And here's a funny one with Ted Cruz at the start. This is really funny. It's such karma, too.
Democrats know that abortion is a political loser for them.
Kansas supposed to protect abortion access. Ooh! Ted Cruz! Owned in a few seconds! Ooh! Especially on Michael Knowles' POS show.
Weren't worried about the midterms before. They should be worried now.
Is it Brexit or is it evolved into Delphox?
Kansas has voted.
Oh, no, it has. Okay, it has actually now evolved into Delphox.
In a big way. A vote that was not even close. And gives a little indication as to what may be motivating voters in the fall. And as I'll get to in this breakdown, this was a vote in a primary. In a primary in a red state. And still, what is expected to be a largely low turnout, especially for Democratic voters, this won in a massive way. So in this video, I will break down this victory, what it means. I will also show you the reaction from Fox News, which is just very enjoyable. And I'll also...
And before we get to that, I also wanted to mention that, because remember on the last few episodes we covered about the backlash about Roe v. Wade being overturned and how Republicans have been tanking like the massive lead they had in the 2022 primaries? Well, I'm happy to report too now, just recently, now the Democrats are on track right now to not only keep the Senate, but expand it from like 50 to 56 seats. All because of Roe v. Wade being overturned. On that alone.
That would be insane.
Because I told y'all, you fucking conservatives that are watching, your ideas about abortion are too extreme and too radical. And Americans overwhelmingly are against it. So when you hear that, you sit down in a corner and shut up and don't advocate for your stupid pro-life crap ever again. Do you understand?
It's later on. For other states that are going to have similar...
Because remember, North Carolina's the constitutional amendment they want to have, not only would it ban abortion, but it will also legalize murdering women who are seeking abortions.
And also, that reminds me, it was Kentucky, Michigan, I think New Hampshire, Vermont, and I think Pennsylvania and some other state where they're actually doing the same thing like Kansas about abortion access. So guess what? As you see, even in very red-wing Kansas, the pro-choice side won. So can you imagine, like Michigan, Pennsylvania, Vermont, New Hampshire, whatever, the odds on that regard? And I don't. And I also
that are blue-leaning purple states, and then Vermont and them that are deep blue.
And
it's going to get blown out of the water.
And when it comes to Kentucky, I don't think Kentucky's is any more red than Kansas. It might be less red. So if Kansas, like I said, is going to fall, it's probably almost a guarantee that hopefully those states are more likely to succeed on our side.
First up, here is the vote. Should the Kansas Constitution be amended to remove protections of abortion rights? 58.8% said no.
Now, all the stuff I saw like in the last days or so, because this is kind of old, because this is 95% reported, it said up to 61% said no. But I mean, even if it is 58.8%, that's a huge win.
41.2% saying yes. This was so massive that it even indicates that Republican voters, many Republican voters had to have voted no in this ballot measure.
Yeah, there definitely was
considering
swing
the
votes in
results
that regard.
in terms of the turnout in the primary.
Oh, no, Kentucky's
So, this is a state, again.
Oh, no, Kentucky's actually more red than Kansas is, so...
Really? Because all this...
yeah, Kentucky... Biden only got about 36% of the vote, while Trump got 62%.
And what about Kansas?
56 to 41.
Huh. But I mean, still by quite a big margin. I'm sure hopefully the pro-choice shit would win there in Kentucky.
Voted for Trump by 15 points in 2020, and I believe by 20 points in 2016. But still a massive red state, and yet they're not for removing abortion rights. Despite what Republicans think and claim, So not only is Kansas a solidly red state that twice voted for President Donald Trump, but also the supermajority Republican legislature decided to schedule the vote for the primary instead of the general election. Turnout is usually far lower in August.
Yeah, like I said, normally this would be like in the general election, but to make it even more likely they're going to win, they did in the primaries to hopefully get less turnout.
And favors Republicans.
That shows how sleazy they
more
were and how much it
primaries
backfired.
Than Democrats in Kansas. And many college students who trend more progressive are away for the summer. So even though they purposely scheduled this vote for a primary because they knew it would give them a better shot at passing this, they still lost by almost 20 points. Now, turnout for the primary also soared above usual levels Tuesday, and in some counties was closer to the participation usually seen in a presidential election. The in-person early vote, which tends to favor Democrats, was also nearly 250% higher than the last primary midterm election in 2018, when both Democrats and Republicans had competitive governor's races, while the number of mail-in ballots was more than double. So even comparing this to 2018, which was a huge year for Democratic turnout, for turnout generally,
It wasn't
even compared
really,
to
sadly.
that, Democrats saw a 250% higher turnout in in-person voting and more than double in terms of mail-in ballots, showing you just how much of a motivating factor abortion rights is. Now, let me get to the reaction in the room from abortion rights supporters when they heard of this victory.
Here is palpable, you guys. We are hearing cheers over and over again. People are crying. I actually just noticed an emotional moment here. You've been volunteering with this campaign. I see you crying right now. Why do you have tears in your eyes?
Yeah, so I'm actually the field organizer for Johnson County, and as someone who grew up in Arkansas, I'm not used to winning, and this is my first ever campaign to be staff on, so it's just very overwhelming.
All right, so shortly here, I will get to the reaction from Fox News, which is just so sweet. But before I get there, look, this is the one issue that is going to save Democrats in the midterms.
Well, you hope, because we still got all August, September, October, and this is the latest election possible in America, November 8th, so you gotta hope that momentum will last that entire time, because you never know what can happen, but we can only hope. But it is definitely true that this definitely hurted Republicans' chances big time, especially now that Democrats are overwhelmingly likely to increase the lead in the Senate.
Before this, you know, you can watch my past
means
videos.
that our mansion and cinema can go Republican, and it wouldn't affect us.
Well, in the fall, but this
They'd
was
just
the
be
first
more
time
honest, at
that
least.
I think it really showcased just how important.
Although last I checked, unfortunately, Republicans are still likely to win the House, so no idea.
Which means they're going to be spending literally all of their time. Means all that we're going to be doing from November until the end of the until 2024 is going to be impeaching Biden.
Yep.
This issue.
And if the Republicans can gain the Senate, guess what? It's gonna fail.
Is, and not just how.
Like I said,
it's obviously
several
important regardless of how it's gonna turn out.
thousand.
But in
I reckon
terms
there's
of
going to
the
be
importance
like
of its ability
100 times Biden's going to be impeached at least.
to bring out people for a vote. So this again is just a primary. Typically very low turnout, especially in red states where Democrats don't have, you know, much representation. But here they came out in a big way because of this issue. So now, to be fair, it is a ballot measure. So not every state's going to have a ballot measure in the fall on you know, abortion.
Like I said, like
but
4 or 5
this is a motivating topic, meaning Democrats should be latching onto this. This should be a main campaign talking point when discussing races in the fall for any
not
Democratic
the only thing. You got to focus on other things,
you know,
too. You
minus
can't
Henry
just
Cuellar,
solely focus on abortion.
the one anti-choice Democrat that was backed by the Democratic Party. Anyways, different topic. But here you have a clear, motivating issue. Democrats need to latch onto this because, honestly, they have very little else. They could try and claim, you know, or talk about what they're fighting for personally, but when you have a president as weak as Joe Biden, it's kind of hard to sell people on anything else. But this is why they got to use this issue. Now, let's get to the reaction from Fox News. So I got a couple of clips here, and Laura Ingram's in both. So let me just play this. It is you're going to see when they first learn of the result, and then.
And also, I was just looking up. So abortion is legal in Kansas up to 22 weeks.
Some of the reaction and the ridiculous claim that is made in this clip that I will debunk very easily.
We've got about 85% in. Sorry for my drawing there, but it looks like no is going to win. What does that mean? It means that Kansas will have those abortion rights enshrined in the state constitution, but it also means...
Which is also very good for Arkansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, maybe even Texas. Like if you're like the most northern part Texas, as Kansas could be an access for abortion if you're in that area. So, very important that Kansas stayed with that law.
Means something bigger, broader for other states. As you know, this will be a battle as we head into some more of these primaries and as we head to the general election in November. Laura?
All right, Brett, thank you. We're watching this and can't wait for those Arizona.
Kansas referendum is very interesting. I do think that pro-lifers should understand that so much money was spent by hardcore abortion supporters to make sure that that amendment failed.
All right, so I'll get to debunking that last point there in a second about the money. But let's just bask in the incredibleness that was that long, awkward pause, and then Laura Ingraham changing the topic to Arizona, because what is she going to say about Kansas? And Brett Baer there, you know, trying to do some kind of reporting about how this is an issue that, you know, is kind of important, people should think about. Maybe Republicans should be aware of how unpopular their position is on this.
They don't care, though.
Stop stripping rights away, but these are the people they put on the bench.
Christian fundamentalism is
so,
more
you know,
important
a
than
40-year
anything.
Project to have these incredibly, I mean, conservative isn't even the right word. We are talking about theocratic picks for the Supreme Court. These individuals stripping rights away. You see the result of that. You know, it's possible some of them actually thought they were on the right side in terms of the popularity of it, but I think it's very obvious now.
And
it wasn't
ignoring
obvious
polls.
before.
Like we showed you. Now the polls, I think, have massively changed like in the last month or so. Like I've always been saying historically, all the polls we showed recently, 50% of Americans think abortion should be legal in some circumstances. I think it was like 31% of Americans think abortion should be legal in all cases, and only 19% think it should be banned in all cases. So over 80% of Americans think abortion should be legal in some regard. So yeah, fringe minority.
It's obvious now that they are not on the winning side of this issue politically. But quickly here on the money. So, you know that, what's her name? Molly Hemingway of the Federalist, editor-in-chief. She claims that, oh, all this money was spent. That's why this ballot measure failed, because all this money was spent against it, except money was spent equally on both sides. So Value Them Both and other groups supporting the amendment have spent more than $6 million combined on advertising, according to data from the media tracking firm Ad Impact. Kansans for Constitutional Freedom has also spent more than $6 million. The limited polling that is available has suggested the vote may be close. Equal amount of money spent on both sides. So you can't claim, oh, only one side had the money. Yes, because historically, all the money is spent in favor of abortion rights.
If that was true, that's good for our side because it means it shows you have no support whatsoever.
But this is the kind of bullshit that these people spew on a regular basis. No, they lost because this issue is incredibly, in terms of their perspective is incredibly unpopular. So that's why they lost. It is very obvious. Now, let's just quickly here. I'm not going to play too much Ted Cruz because God knows no one can stand watching him. But then I'll show you that even in red counties in Kansas, the massive change from Trump to their vote on the ballot measure.
Democrats know that abortion is a political loser for them.
say there were Republicans, who voted no on this. Here's just one random county in rural western Kansas. Donald Trump won 85% of the vote here. Joe Biden barely got 10% in 2020. The no side got basically triple what Biden got. Again, this is
So that means Republicans in these counties in Kansas voted for pro-choice.
Exactly.
So much for losing issue, right, Ted Cruz? Bumbling retard.
win in this county for
Brain
years,
dead
but not
moron.
nearly the margin Republicans have been posting there.
Oh, sure. Steve Kornacki with his data, his numbers, his facts, his proof, whatever. What really matters is
facts,
Ted
remember?
Cruz. Because when Ted Cruz speaks, I know I'm listening to an honest
As Benny Boy always historically says, feelings over facts. And if you disagree with me, you're anti-Semitic. And my wife is
everyone is anti-Semitic.
And my wife's a doctor, and I'm mad because I can't get wet-ass P-word.
He couldn't get wet. He can't get his wife wet. I feel sorry for his wife.
Who cares that he just pulled it out of his ass with absolutely nothing to back it up?
I am
But
Pikachu
Ted Cruz,
shot
an honest
face.
man. Steve Kornacki,
I'm not.
Data, whatever. Doesn't matter. No, this is so clearly going to be, if Democrats are able to salvage the midterms and hold on to the Senate and maybe grow their support in the
By the
Senate.
way, right now, it
This
looks like that's going to
will
be the case.
I think a large part
Yep.
of the reason. And you see some recent polling here. Democrats favorite to win Senate for the first time as polling improves. That's
Yep,
from
as I
538.
covered.
So this is from
There's this YouTuber I've mentioned on this show before, Let's Talk Politics. He does polling all the time. And like I said, that one video I saw recently, it showed that Democrats have a possibility to get up to 56 Senate seats right now, which is a huge win.
about a week ago, July 27th. So since the overturning of Roe, the chances or the polling for Democrats have improved. Now, it does help to have people like, John Fetterman running in Pennsylvania, a fantastic candidate, but also to have this issue across the board impact all these races. I really think this is going to be the main reason why Democratic voters turn out in the midterms in what would usually be a low turnout for the Democratic Party, especially during a very unsuccessful first 2 years in Biden's presidency, and that's being kind. Now, last thing here. As I said, there are 4 more ballot measures having to do with abortion.
Oh, here's some other new ones too. Kentucky, Vermont, as we mentioned, Montana, and California. I wonder why Pennsylvania and Michigan are on the list. Well, we know California, duh. Montana. Actually, I think Montana, of all the not the Rocky states, I think it's one of the more progressive, like Red Wing states. So I'm sure that would be okay too to pass. But we know California definitely would survive.
This fall, all on November 8th. The election day.
So, Garrett, you know what to do on November 8th.
California, Proposition 1. Kentucky, an amendment. Montana, LR 131. And Vermont, Proposal 5. So if you are in one of these states, make sure you look this up. Ensure you are voting the right way. Because it may, be a yes or no depending on what the actual question is. And be sure to not be confused by a lot of the misinformation that will now definitely be generated due to this result in Kentucky or in Kansas. So now that it is obvious that abortion rights are very popular, you're going to have a lot of anti-abortion, the anti-abortion side of each of these amendments. You're going to have them, or propositions, you're going to have them come out and spread misinformation about what a vote for their side actually means.
Yeah, for anyone in these states, read them up carefully because some of them you might have to vote yes, some of you might have to vote no. And pro-life retards in Kansas did actually try, as we just found out, to trick people into voting the wrong way accidentally in Kansas. So be on the lookout and be very reading up info. Make sure you got everything correct. Make sure abortion's still safe in all these states.
You have to be informed and ensure you are voting the correct way. But again, as I said, I think this is going to be the motivating factor for Democrats in the fall. I was very skeptical about Democrats' chances in the midterms up to this point, but now seeing just how much of a turnout you can have in a place like Kansas for this issue alone, it really makes me think that conservatives went a little too far And
No,
people
they didn't
are
go a little
not
too far. They bit off more than they could chew.
going to take it. They have a limit in terms of the kind of garbage they will accept. Here, there is a very clear defining line between Republicans and Democrats, and this issue alone, I think, is going to motivate a lot of people to come out and support Democrats in the fall.
Yep, Republicans basically just ruined any chance they had to get massive wins in this primary. Now they probably not going to win the Senate now. Help Democrats expand the Senate, which, hey, thank you. That way we won't have to worry about Manchin Cinema trying to stop us. And hopefully, I don't know about the House right now. Last I checked, Republicans still have a chance to win. But if they do, it's not going to be the blowout that they thought was going to be originally. So yeah, what do you guys say about Kansas actually being smart for once?
That's pretty cool. About time.
Yep, and also about conservatives Malden that it didn't go their way. Keep coping. So now,
mold, Steve.
Oh, and speaking of Malden, I think it's time to watch a big baby for once, and that's Ron DeSantis. Yeah. And you want to know? So guys, you want to hear something really funny? Guess why DeSantis is being a big baby about now?
What?
Because he was criticized by Ann Navarro on The View. Oh my God. Ann Navarro, that dumb fucking right-wing cunt, said a little bit mean things to you and you're that triggered by it. Come on. Like, dude, you're scared of Ann Navarro? Come on.
Recent overturning of Roe v. Wade has sparked concerns that access to contraception and gay rights could also be endangered. We all know that. But are Republicans themselves in danger of overplaying their hand by moving
we already seen they bit off more than they could chew already.
Fast and possibly alienating.
They blew a big opportunity. It's gonna hurt them, and I'm glad to see it.
Profile 2.
We're seeing in Florida, I can't even comprehend. This is a state where we have a housing crisis. This is a state where we have an insurance crisis. This is a state where we have a climate crisis. And instead, Ron DeSantis is focusing on drag queens. And so listen, yes, do I think a 5-year-old should be at a drag show? No. But you know what? If you are for parental choice when it comes to your kid wearing a mask to school, if you are for parental choice when it comes to your kid learning about slavery and learning the true history of this country, then why in the hell can't you be about parental choice on whether you take your kid to a drag show or not?
Well, that's true.
This is,
but conservatives don't care about parental choice. They just want to control.
I looked at the top causes of endangerment for children, of children's death. It's firearms. It's car accidents. It's drowning. It is not drag queen. I'm yet to see a kid who dies from being exposed to a drag queen.
That was a clip from the August 1st episode of the...
Such a tepid... Honestly, that was like a very tepid criticism from DeSantis from Ann Navarro. But the fact that he is mauled over such a tepid response is really sad.
The View shared by the Deputy Press Secretary of Ron DeSantis, Brian Griffin. And he says, The View emailed our office on Friday asking for us to arrange an appearance from Governor DeSantis on the show. We would be honored, they wrote. Thoughts? Now, the reason why he shared that particular clip was because obviously they were criticizing Ron DeSantis in said clip. So the juxtaposition with, them criticizing him and also extending an invite is supposedly going to make The View look bad. But I mean, they're obviously critical of him, so does Ron DeSantis want to face some of his critics? And the answer ultimately is no, because as you'll learn, they declined The View's invite. Now we'll talk about their reasoning in a moment here, but it's just interesting that this big, strong, tough guy doesn't want to go on a program because they were big meanies and his fifis were hurt. Yeah, and what they were saying was not uncharitable. I rarely agree with Ana Navarro on anything, but what she said there was factually correct. As Axios reports, last week, Florida Education Commissioner Manny Diaz told school districts to ignore federal guidelines aimed at protecting students and teachers from discrimination because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. And that guidance was issued following an executive order signed by Joe Biden, which creates federal standards when it comes to discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. Ron DeSantis is saying here in the state of Florida, we discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. Yeah, so how can you say that their criticism is somehow bad when it's accurate? On top of that, he's going after small businesses who are LGBTQ plus inclusive. As HuffPost explains, the Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation filed an administrative complaint for disorderly conduct against Our House restaurant, citing the state Supreme Court ruling against men impersonating women. According to the complaint, a copy of which was obtained by NBC News, the video shows what appears to be a transgender dancer leading a young girl by the hand and walking through respondent's dining area. The dancer's buttocks were fully exposed, and his G-string style bikini bottom was stuffed with dollar bills. The dancer's breasts were also fully exposed, noted the complaint. The complaint alleges that Our House violated state public nuisance law by becoming manifestly injurious to the morals or manners of the people. The department cited the 1947 Florida Supreme Court decision that found that men impersonating women in a suggestive performance constitutes a public nuisance. LGBTQ activists view the action as the opening of a campaign to shut down all drag shows and go after trans people. Now, the whole reason why Ron DeSantis claims he is against CRT and had to sign the Don't Say Gay bill into law was because he believes in parental rights. Parents should have the autonomy to raise their children without the state or federal government indoctrinating them into their values. But here he is doing the opposite, saying, actually, I get to decide, the state gets to decide what is and isn't appropriate for your child. Now, I watched the video in question. It was shared by Libs of TikTok. And while I think that family-friendly LGBTQ plus events and drag shows are generally fine for children, assuming that they're age appropriate, for this particular event, I probably wouldn't feel comfortable personally taking my nephews or my niece to that event, but I also wouldn't feel comfortable taking my nephews or my niece to an NRA event. I didn't let my nephew play, M-rated video games when he was 12 years old, and he wanted to. But there are different levels of comfort for parents. So, when I worked at Walmart, I was in the electronics department, and I would warn parents that the game that they were purchasing for their prepubescent child was rated M, and it had violence and GTA 5 that was torture in it, and many of them were fine with that. So it just depends on what the comfort level is. But what's important is that there's no harm being done here. That child in that particular video is not being abused. Perhaps it's a little bit inappropriate based on your comfort level, right?
Yeah. I would get my kid an M-rated game if they wanted. I don't give a crap. And yes, I'd rather take them to a drag show over a gun range. Absolutely. Fuck guns. Absolutely. Drag stuff done.
But what matters is what the parents want. And if a parent thinks that that's fine, who is Ron DeSantis to tell them that it's not okay? Does Ron DeSantis go after kids at NRA shows? Does Ron DeSantis go after
conservative? And they are about everything. And he loves getting into everyone else's business because he's evil.
Men are men and women are women, and fuck the LGBT.
Women are not human.
Hooters?
Women are not human, and men are awesome.
And also, there's nothing wrong with kids going to Hooters, but if they go to a drag show, it's the end of the world.
Children, when it comes to heterosexual things, well, of course not, because he's trying to go after LGBTQ plus people exclusively, and in particular with this business, he wants to get their liquor license revoked, which would be catastrophic for their business. And he knows that there's no harm that's being done, hence why he had to cite a 1947 state Supreme Court decision alleging that this event was injurious to the morals and manners of the people. So in other words, it's indecent, and that's why he's against it. Okay, well, don't take your kids to that event.
Rights Act too.
Don't do things that you view as indecent, so long as there's no abuse, nothing illegal going on there, no harm being done. It's none of your fucking business. But Ron DeSantis is using the power of the state to crack down on parental rights, to crack down on small businesses. So I'm sorry, when you've created this statewide witch hunt against LGBT,
we're in America, not Christian Saudi Arabia.
Q plus people. And you don't apply the same standard of outrage when it comes to heterosexual equivalent events. I mean, people are right to criticize you, considering that Americans are more accepting of LGBTQ plus people than ever before. But yet he doesn't want to face his critics. And because The View had the audacity to criticize him, he ultimately decided to reject their invite, and his deputy press secretary shared this press release, citing times that they criticized Ron DeSantis on the show. So Joy Behar in August 2021 said, "You're just short of calling DeSantis a negligent homicidal sociopath because that's what he is." She added, "What is he doing? He's risking the lives of children, children's parents, their grandparents, anyone they may come into contact with, so he can appeal to his white supremacist base so he can continue in his career and get reelected." They're presumably talking about his COVID policies, which were catastrophic. Sonny Hostin in June of 2022, "Death Santis, I think he's a fascist and a bigot." Accurate. And Navarro, April 2022, on his policy saying it's anti-black, it's anti-gay, it's anti-LGBTQ plus community, and for some reason the Republican base responds to it, and it's anti-American. It's what happens in Venezuela, it's what happens in Nicaragua.
Ooh, being compared to Venezuela and Nicaragua. Ooh, that gotta stick. DeSantis, you're an evil piece of shit.
I agree with her, although I think that the comparison to Latin American countries is unnecessary. Sonny Hostin in February of 2022 with his policies. It started with CRT, let's remember that, and those are anti-history laws, anti-black history laws, really. She said, if you start coming after black people, what comes next, right? Of course, the LGBTQ plus community, and then women, and then other marginalized groups. And let's be clear, what Sonny Hostin said there in that last quote was 100% accurate, because it started with CRT panic last year in 2021, and then this year they've moved on to LGBTQ plus people. This hyper-focus on drag shows and don't say gay
about
laws.
that for way before
and now
CRT,
we're seeing
like the other way
reproductive
around,
rights of women
together.
being taken away by the right. So what they're saying about Ron DeSantis, these are accurate criticisms. They're harsh, but nonetheless, they're accurate. And even if they were uncharitable, don't you as a public figure feel the need to defend yourself? Well, no, because Ron DeSantis views this as a sort of power move, but in actuality, it's a bitch move. It makes you look like you don't want to respond to your critics. Now, his actual press secretary, Christine Pushaw, tweeted this: "Liberal media wants to interview Governor DeSantis because his popularity draws ratings, but Governor Ron DeSantis will not assist failing legacy media outlets in growing an audience for their smear pieces and biased reporting laden with contempt for Americans." Okay, first of all, they're not reporters, they're commentators. So they can be biased in their capacity as political commentators. They might have dumb views, uninformed views sometimes. I often criticize, hosts on The View, but they're not reporters, so to claim that they're like inaccurate.
And Anna Navarro is a far-right neocon piece of shit cunt. She's horrible. It's just on this one thing she happens to be right on.
Biased.
Yes, otherwise
really
she's a
not
fucking
applicable
cunt
to this particular situation.
who almost deserves
this is
right.
a fascist move right out of Trump's playbook.
Right.
Let me remind you of this 2016 article from Vox.
To be right,
Trump will skip Fox News' debate because of Megyn Kelly. Somebody who's a Democrat, a small D Democrat. They actually believe in letting the media criticize politicians, people in power.
Remember Trump had a meltdown over Megyn Kelly, criticized him in the 2016 primaries, and he skipped the debate because of it.
I remember that.
And the funny thing was, he actually won the debate somehow. How?
Even if you disagree, this is a job of the media. They're supposed to hold elected officials accountable, and oftentimes they fail. But in the instance of criticizing Ron DeSantis, the ladies on The View have been pretty accurate. So if you don't want to face them, that says more about you than it does about them, but they're trying to flip this and make it seem as if, we won't give in to your bias, we won't legitimize your news show, when in actuality it's because he's afraid to face them because he knows that their criticisms are accurate and correct. He doesn't want to defend his COVID policy that led to thousands and thousands of people dying unnecessarily so in the state of Florida. He doesn't want to defend his bigoted Don't Say Gay law, now knowing that the effect has led to discrimination against queer teachers and queer students. So even if he tries to spin this, and his team tries to spin this as a power move, in actuality it makes him look weak. But this is what fascists do. They don't like criticism. They try to ignore.
And just so you all know, he right now is the only other challenger for Trump for the Republican nomination in 2022 right now. So, piece of shit against a piece of shit orangutan. Maybe, just maybe, you all should get a brain and realize, these two suck, let's not vote for any of them and just vote for progressives instead.
And eventually shut down their critics. Somebody who Ron DeSantis has taken cues from, Viktor Orban, the dictator of Hungary, he claims that you have to control the media. That's the way that you consolidate power. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but, if he already copied Don't Say Gay from Viktor Orban, perhaps he's copying that same media policy or, guideline for himself. So, that's where we're at. Ron DeSantis is too afraid to face critics on The View, and I don't blame him, because with how terrible of a governor he's been, actually facing your critics when they have legitimate criticisms isn't going to end well for you. So the best move for him politically would be to just dodge this appearance altogether. But it makes him look weak, even if he thinks that this is going to make him seem really strong and disciplined. No, it makes you look like a bitch, Ron DeSantis.
So, what do you guys say about DeSantis being a beta?
He's being an omega male. That's not a surprise.
Oof. So
Pope Steve mauled all those other words endlessly forever, Ron Snowflake.
You mean Death Santis too?
Yep.
So now, on to the next topic, and that's good old Jon Stewart.
Destroys Republicans! Yeah!
As he always does, because for all of you who don't know, Jon Stewart used to be running this Jon Stewart show on Comedy Central. He was so awesome. He, ever since he left, has been pretty much a advocate on one single issue, and that's like veterans benefits and stuff like that. He is a main reason why first responders for 9/11 still have benefits this day, because Republicans for over a decade now have been trying to cut them over and over again. And Jon Stewart has to go down to D.C., humiliate them into falling in line. So now, once again, he has to do it once again because Republicans just cannot have a heart enough to realize we need to just support this just because. They have to be beaten into submission to support it, instead of just being at the right, instead of supporting it for just because.
Out of them.
Yep.
There's a tweet from Senator Rick Scott of Florida from yesterday. It's beautiful. And I'm sorry about the cursing, and let me say something beautiful to make it up to you. I was honored to join the USO today and make care packages for our brave military members in gratitude of their sacrifice and service to our nation. And there's a beautiful picture. I wish you could see it. He's standing with a little package. Did you get the package? I think it has M&Ms in it and some cookies and some moist towelettes. I don't even know, honestly, I don't even know what to say. I've been coming down here 10, 15 years. I'm used to the hypocrisy. Christina King will tell you from VFW. She sat in an office with Mitch McConnell and a war veteran from Kentucky, and he looked that man in the eyes and he said, "We'll get it done." And he lied to him. Because Mitch McConnell yesterday flipped.
Loves it when people die. He gets off on it.
I'm used to the hypocrisy. Senator Pat Toomey won't take a meeting with the veterans groups. Sends out his chief of staff. I'm used to the cowardice. I've been here a long time. Senate's where accountability goes to die. These people don't care. They're never losing their jobs. They're never losing their health care. Pat Toomey didn't lose his job. He's walking away. God knows what kind of pot of gold he's stepping into to lobby this government to shit on more people. I'm used to all of it, but I am not used to the cruelty.
You should be, though.
That was a snippet from Jon Stewart's speech outside of the Capitol.
I mean, John, you've been dealing with this for like 10 years plus now. You should know how the Republicans are.
That GOP senators blocked a bill to expand health care for veterans. It's just unnecessarily cruel, but this is what we've come to expect from the modern GOP. I know that Jon Stewart says that this isn't necessarily his expectation, but this is my expectation. The cruelty, the barbarity is the point of the GOP, because that's how extreme they are. But this is what they blocked. As The Guardian explains, the measure, called the Honoring Our Pact Act, would make it easier for veterans to access military care related to exposure to Agent Orange in Vietnam and toxins from pits used to burn military waste in Iraq and Afghanistan. A version of the bill passed the Senate 84-14 earlier this year, but was sent back to the House for some technical corrections. It easily passed there, but on Wednesday, 25 Republican senators who previously supported the measure declined to move it forward. John Cornyn, a Texas Republican, told CNN Republicans did not back the measure because Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, was blocking votes on amendments Republicans wanted. Cornyn also said Republicans wanted to negotiate more in order to cut out some of the mandatory spending contained in the bill. In other words, they're blocking this bill because they're mad at Chuck Schumer because he's not giving them what they want. And they're using sick veterans who they sent to war as bargaining chips. That is outrageous. But I'm not surprised at all by this. At all. You know, these Republicans, they will vote for every single war. They will vote for every single military expansion. No questions asked. No concerns about the deficit.
They love
nothing.
murder.
But when it comes to helping sick veterans, they deny that responsibility. So Jon Stewart is going to touch on this point in the next clip.
These people thought they could finally breathe. You think their struggles end because the PACT Act passes? All it means is they don't have to decide between their cancer drugs and their house. Their struggle continues.
This bill does a lot more than just give us health care.
Gives them health care, gives them benefits, lets them live.
Keeps veterans from going homeless, keeps veterans from becoming addicts, keeps veterans from committing suicide.
Senator Toomey's not going to hear that because he won't sit down with this man. Because he is a fucking coward. You hear me? A coward. And like I say, I'm used to it. But this type of cruelty on those that we say we hold up as our most valued Americans, then what are we? Pat Toomey stood up there, Patriot Pat Toomey, excuse me, I'm sorry. I want to give him his propers. I want to make sure that I give him his propers. Patriot Pat Toomey stood on the floor and said, this is a slush fund. They're going to use $400 billion to spend on whatever they want. That's nonsense. I call bullshit. This isn't a slush fund. You know what's a slush fund? The OCO, the Overseas Contingency Operations Fund. $60 billion, $70 billion every year on top of $500 billion, $600 billion, $700 billion of a defense budget. That's a slush fund. Unaccountable. No guardrails. Did Pat Toomey stand up and say, this is irresponsible, the guardrails? No, not one of them did. They vote for it year after year after year. You don't support the troops. You support the war machine. That's all you care about.
He personally signed the proclamation to send me to war.
Boy, they haven't met a war they won't sign up for, and they haven't met a veteran they won't screw over. What the fuck are we?
Barbaric. It's barbaric.
And now they're going to go away. Pat Toomey says, I've got veterans groups behind me. I call bullshit. These are the veterans groups. VFW, American Legion, IAVA, Wounded Warriors, DAV, AMVETS. They're all here. This is the veterans community, Senator. They don't stand behind you. In fact, you won't let them stand in front of you. Cowards, all of them. Cowards, all of them.
Because they don't give a fuck about
now they say, well, this will get done.
They love the murder.
After we get back from our summer recess, maybe during the lame duck. Because they're on Senate time. Do you understand? You live around here. Senate time is ridiculous. These motherfuckers live to 200. They're tortoises. They live forever, and they never lose their jobs, and they never lose their benefits, and they never lose all those things. Well, they're not on Senate time. They're on human time. Cancer time.
Exactly.
Don't you have families? Don't you have people
They don't,
who are
or at least
deciding
not
how
ones
to live
that they
their
spend any
last
time
moments?
with.
I know some of them. They've been down here advocating with us. They spent their remaining time advocating so that other soldiers didn't have to face the indignities and the depravity and the desperation that they faced. And none of them will hear it. And none of them care.
Because
except
conservatives
to tweet,
never
boy,
care.
They'll tweet it.
No,
Can't wait to see what they come up with on Veterans Day, on Memorial Day. Well, this is the reality of it.
All virtuous signaling.
Really powerful speech here.
Yep, they
Now,
love,
my favorite
they
part was
love
when
it.
he said, "You don't support the troops, you support the war machine." That is precisely
Exactly.
correct.
So fucking true.
Because they're happy to use troops for propaganda purposes to cultivate support for their wars, but when it comes time to actually responsibly protect these veterans who survived war, take care of them, they're nowhere to be found. It's truly despicable. Truly despicable. Now, I'm glad that Jon Stewart made that point, because nobody is really making this point. We talk about the deficit all the time, or we hear about the deficit being talked about in mainstream media. How can we support healthcare expansions? How can we support, reducing the cost of prescription drugs when we have this out of control deficit and inflation? But when it comes to the military budget, it gets expanded all the time, and there's just never any concerns about that. And that is infuriating to me. So I'm glad that he's making this point where everyone can see it. And Jon Stewart is really good at raising the salience of particular issues, because nobody was paying attention to this particular issue until he sounded the alarm. I just wish, my only request really from Jon is that he would expand what he advocates for. Talk about trans rights.
Unfortunately,
talk about
he's
the
just a
lack of
single issue
universal health
person.
care in
There's
this
not much
country,
you can
which
really do about
leads to
that.
tens of thousands
I mean,
of people
he
dying
probably does support all
every
those things we
single
brought
year.
up
These are
to him.
things that he alone, I think,
It's
could
just this particular thing he cares more about.
raise the salience of. I think that he's actually that influential as a political figure. Now, I want to show you another clip. I've got two more for you. The first is of Jon Stewart going on Newsmax. So he's going on every platform to get out the message, and he really shows you how it's done. Because the right-wing pundit on Newsmax tried to run interference for Republican senators, but Jon Stewart shot that shit down brilliantly. Let's watch.
But I did want to point out, just to push back a little bit on this, so the Republicans, when you say what you said, they do not support veterans. The Republicans push back saying there is unrelated spending within this.
It's not. It's just not true. What they're saying is they don't like that it's mandatory as opposed to discretionary. There is an unrelated spending to it. They're saying there could be if there wasn't oversight, but that's what the Senate's job is. The bill itself is incredibly detailed and prescriptive about what it's for.
And
It's about treating and preventing the different conditions that veterans are coming home with, including cancers and chronic bronchiolitis and all these other issues from their exposures in Iraq and Afghanistan. And to push back on what they're saying, what if this creates a slush fund, right? So are you familiar with something called the OCO, the Overseas Contingency Operations Fund?
Fairly, yes.
So every year, $50 billion, $60 billion, $70 billion is added to what's called the OCO on top of the $600 billion, $700 billion, $800 billion that goes to the Defense Department. That OCO fund is actually a slush fund. $60 to $70 billion every year. No oversight, no guardrails. And every one of those Republicans that voted against health care for veterans voted for the slush fund for the war. They don't support the truth. They support the war machine. And that's got to stop. The value in the U.S. military isn't in the toys. It's not in the hardware. It's not in the tanks. It's in the men and women. And until they start supporting them in the manner that they purport to online, they are hypocrites.
It is.
That was brilliant. I wanted to show that to you because that is what you're supposed to do if you go on right-wing news shows, right? There's this debate on the left about whether or not it's acceptable for people who were formerly on the left, Glenn Greenwald, Jimmy Dore, to go on Fox News. And the answer is, it's fine if you go on Fox News, but only if you forcefully push back and get out the left message. If you just go on that program and you recite what they want you to say, if you be their useful idiot, that can be harmful. But what Jon Stewart did here by going on a far-right news outlet is he rebutted their points. He didn't play ball with them. That clip shows you that he was getting his message across and not allowing them to do propaganda at the behest of GOP senators. Now, one more clip that I want to show you is from a veteran on MSNBC who had a particular message for Republican Senator Pat Toomey.
Republicans love the soldier, but they don't love the veteran. And that's the bottom line. And again, politics and game playing at the cost of human life is unacceptable. And no matter what the issue is in this country, Americans don't have to put up with it. I don't care if you're far right or far left. This is not about politics right now. This is about human life. So those who are going to tweet and text me and email me and say, I'm this and I'm that, I am a human being. I'm a human being before I am a Republican or a Democrat. I am a human being before I'm an American. And when human beings suffer, and you do not get involved and watch that suffering, you're as guilty as the party who is pushing out that suffering. And enough is enough. And to watch Lou Alvarez and Ray Pfeiffer and others, Andrew, I've been to 191 funerals. Soon I'll be going to my own. And the fact that we have to continue to fight for veterans or first responders is proof that the Congress and the Senate in this country do not get it. And the American people should be fed up like Jon Stewart, John Field, and all of the VSOs. Pat Toomey said yesterday that the VSOs wanted him to block this bill. Every VSO organization was at that press conference today, and nobody stood with Pat Toomey. He's a liar. His wife should divorce him. His dog should bite him, and he should not get health care when he leaves and retires because he's a piece of shit.
That was incredible. So look, I don't have much commentary to add here. I think that what Jon Stewart and these veterans are doing is really important. They're really creating a blueprint, or perhaps a potential blueprint.
But I will read his obituary with great glee.
This is successful, but I think that he will have a degree of success here because...
And this was like a week ago whenever this happened. It actually did pass, thankfully, in a blowout. All thanks to you, Stewart.
Before, he has shamed Republicans sufficiently enough to get them to buckle. And I think that he could possibly do this again because by him going to the Capitol, having this speech, powerful speech, you're getting mainstream media coverage. And this is how it's done. It's sad that the only way to accomplish anything, even incremental policies like this policy, which is incrementalist, it's sad that you have to shame politicians into doing the right thing, but this is where we're at in our so-called democracy, where you can't
like Stewart to do
simply get what you want by voting for politicians and crossing your fingers that they're going to do the right thing. They're corrupt, they're sellouts, and they're cruel. So in order to get them to do your bidding even a little bit, you have to shame them relentlessly. So if we as Americans learn from this, and we have solidarity and we join together to shame politicians on other issues, and we're overwhelming in our condemnation, perhaps we could be successful as well.
So yeah, what do you guys say about Jon Stewart being awesome as always?
It is awesome, and I loved it.
Yep.
Great job, and it fucking worked.
Yep.
Take notes, Jimmy Dore. This is how you get Republicans to buckle on you, and this is how you fight for the left on Fox News.
And this also applies to Vosh and other idiots too when it comes to Democrats that are too much of a pussy do it.
I gotta say, the doorknobs and the Vosh shits are as bad as each other.
Yep.
I mean, Vosh himself, he claims to be a socialist. He's actually a neoliberal. He's not a leftist. Neither is Jimmy Dore. Neither is Jimmy Dore or his cronies and acolytes. And they're both as fucking bad as each other, and I hate all of them.
So yeah, good on Jon Stewart, but at the same time, it's also pretty sad that he has to do all this just for Republicans to do something so simple as benefits for veterans. It shouldn't be that hard, but of course, not surprised when you guys are just evil and don't give a fuck. He's had to do this for years.
Alright, last one. China molding over Taiwan again.
Yep. So anyways, this is actually, because this is a very long video that Kyle covered, just recently, Nancy Pelosi went to Taiwan, and she's the highest American official to go to Taiwan in 25 years. And China has been mauled so badly over it the last few days that they've been doing, like, military exercises literally almost completely around Taiwan, like, almost blocking it.
I saw that.
And lately, they've actually been firing missiles and tests and stuff over Taiwan, literally over Taiwan itself, that landed in Japan's exclusive economic zones. So now they pissed off Japan immensely for it too. So why is China mauling so much over this? Well, here's the good thing about this field, because it actually almost, because I'm very well knowledgeable about this situation, it goes into depth of why China is mauling over Taiwan. Hell, even Kyle learned a whole bunch from it.
All right, it's time for the big story that everybody's talking about. See a lot of dialogue around this. I actually see some people taking different sides on this issue, even amongst the left, which is an interesting split. But this is in Reuters here. Pelosi arrives in Taiwan, vowing U.S. commitment. China enraged. So,
keep mauling.
I got to give you, in order to discuss this further, I have to give you the backstory.
And you know what else will make them mauled? Taiwan's an independent country. Oh, you know they're going to be mad about that one.
Well, we know that there was a thing for Taiwan and China to eventually merge together, because that's the thing. Both the CCP and the TCP and the PCT, PRT for Taiwan, they say that they're the legitimate China.
Well, we're going to get to that a little bit.
Yeah, or ROT then.
ROC, yeah.
Of Taiwan.
In the Olympics and that, Taiwan actually plays Chinese Taipei.
Yeah.
Different things. So, Pelosi arrives there. I think she didn't have it on her official schedule, but she went there, and this is supposed to be a sign of, like, solidarity with Taiwan. Like, they're a real ally, and they're kind of a separate country. Even though, by the way, a U.S. government official, I'm forgetting, John Kirby or whatever his name is, he came out the other day and said, no, they're actually not their own country.
That's incorrect, though. They are. But at the same time, America tries to placate into the one China policy to make China not rage any more than they already are. But when it all comes down to it, in reality, Taiwan is an independent country, regardless of what China likes to hear. And I think deep down they know it, they just don't want to accept the reality.
So at the same time they're doing this whole show thing of, like, respecting the sovereignty of Taiwan, you have, U.S. government officials like, well, technically they're not really their own country. But anyway, I digress, because I want to give you the backstory before I comment any further. Now, at the same time this happened, Taiwan Presidential Office website hit by cyber attack ahead of Pelosi visit. So, Pelosi shows up. At the same time, cyber attacks against the government of Taiwan. At the same time, China is scrambling jets and the military to do, like, live fire exercises all surrounding Taiwan. And the other thing is we learned this morning is they just slapped some trade sanctions or whatever on Taiwan, something to that effect.
But I thought they were not an independent country, China. Very
there's a headline I saw on that before I came on air. So, China is insistent. Don't go to Taiwan. Don't do this trip. You're not welcome in what we claim is our territory here. It's like, snubbing your nose at us, effectively. And Pelosi was like, fuck off. I'm going to do what I want, and so I'm going there. All right.
And guess what, China? It is her right if she wants to go there. Likewise, it's Taiwan's choice if they wanted to have her there or not. So, eat shit twice.
Okay, now, again, can't comment any further until we get a little bit of backstory, a little bit of history. So this is in The Economist here. The title of the video is Taiwan part of China? Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into it, and we'll probably pause as we go along and comment.
Taiwan is located...
The following content has been identified by the YouTube community as inappropriate or offensive to some audiences.
Oh,
okay,
no! Chinese bots more!
Because that undoubtedly is like either the Chinese government, somebody in China. I guess they have their internet censored, so I don't know how free and open it is to go to YouTube, but I'm guessing somebody who's very pro-China
region from the Chinese
finds
Civil
this
War
offensive,
free and
maybe it's a little too
democratic.
nuanced
Oh,
to
we
the
can't
narrative
have
they want,
that.
so they kind of they put this warning, this content warning on it. So anyway, let's refresh and see if we can get this bad boy to function. Man, how obnoxious is this? I understand that this is
I
inappropriate
understand
and
that Taiwan's an independent country
Imagine
and China
this
is not liking that fact.
Like a history discussion about
The same
China and
goes for
Taiwan.
Harry.
Yeah, very pissed offy.
If countries were people, the relationship between China, America...
These are two nuclear-armed countries. It's kind of an unimaginable horror, but it is a risk. And, maybe sooner than we think.
Is Taiwan part of China?
No.
Taiwan is located just 100 miles off the Chinese coast. But it's not just the Taiwan Strait that separates them. The island's official status is a hotly contested issue.
For people in Taiwan and for most of the world, Taiwan is an independent country. But as far as the Chinese government is concerned...
It's actually not true because most countries in the world don't recognize Taiwan as independent, which we're going to get to a little bit later on. But, like I said earlier, it doesn't matter. They are, regardless of what the rest of the world thinks.
Taiwan is a renegade province which must be reunified with China.
Okay, so that's already the kind of the gist of it. People in Taiwan want to be independent, sort of claim to be independent. Many states throughout the world.
They actually don't want to officially announce themselves as independent. They want the status quo to exist, which, hey, works out because in the end, they are independent regardless of their stated policy or whatever.
Recognize them as independent. China claims, no, bitch, you're part of us. And
I see China having control over Taiwan. Oh, look, I don't see that.
And you have a source for it, post it in the comment section below. This specific breakdown in terms of what number of countries recognize it as independent and what number of countries say, no, you're part of China. Anyway, let's continue.
For the past 70 years, the threat of American military intervention has ensured that didn't happen.
There has been a long-standing agreement.
China has claimed that the United States is destabilizing peace in the Taiwan Strait.
The expectation is that America is, at a minimum, the security guarantor that if China invaded, they should expect the US 7th Fleet to turn up very soon, and that could be a war.
This precarious standoff,
and that threat, hopefully, will make them back off and leave Taiwan alone,
is a consequence of the unique role Taiwan has played in China's divided history.
I'd say between 2027 and 2030, I think, was the...
Now, this is the history of it, and it gets really interesting.
At the end of the Second World War, the defeated Japanese, who had occupied Taiwan for 50 years, were forced to give up control.
By the way, that was the Japanese Empire was vicious.
Yes, we covered that before over the years.
Japan, they were on par with ISIS with their brutality.
On par? Not only that, they did a whole bunch of shit that might even rival the Nazis during the Holocaust. Like Japan.
No. The Japanese Empire was worse.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Japanese Empire and ISIS. That's why I've said that the only group that can be that the Japanese Empire can be compared to is ISIS.
Yep,
because of how brutal they were.
They did so many horrible things to millions and millions of Chinese and everyone in Southeast Asia and all that. But of course, we beat them in World War II, and hey, we need a power to confront the Soviet Union. So let's just forget all about what you did and prop you up. Whereas we'll go after mean old Germany for what they did. Like I said before, the world was too harsh to Germany and too soft on Japan.
Obviously, they
should have fucking dropped every single bloody should have fucking bombed as much of, not just like wipe the cities out, but bombed as much of the fucking country as possible.
Which we did.
And probably dropped, and honestly should have dropped more than two nukes. Should have dropped about 5.
But anyways, yeah, historically, back in the 1890s, Japan took Taiwan away from China in the Sino-Japanese War, the first one. So for like 50 years up to World War II, it was under Japanese control.
The Chinese,
that's how it originally started with this controversy.
Goddamn, they were on some shit, which is why post World War II, we sort of enforced on them from the outside disarmament and pacifism. It was written into the Japanese Constitution. That was in part at the behest of
and then the far right in Japan trying to destroy that too.
Dog, you were particularly vicious with your empire. I know, glass house, right? But still, point stands nonetheless.
Taiwan was handed back to the Republic of China, then a military dictatorship led by Chiang Kai-shek.
So Taiwan was handed back to the Republic of China, but Chiang Kai-shek was a dictator who was ruling it, and now you're going to learn more.
Chinese Nationalist Party. But it was a short-lived union. Within months, China's civil war, which had been fought intermittently since 1927, ignited once more.
Communist Chinese armies fighting the nationalist forces of Chiang Kai-shek.
So often I barely hear anything.
By 1949, Mao's Red Army had swept to victory, deposing Chiang Kai-shek's military dictatorship. And
Okay. So Mao and the communists in China basically
won the Civil War.
Win the Civil War.
And the remains of the Kuomintang and the nationalists, originally the Republic of China, fled to Taiwan. And that's been the case since 1949.
The right-wing nationalists, led by Chiang Kai-shek,
Taiwan is basically the remnants of the Chinese Republic from 1911.
Okay, so that's
exactly
which I keep telling Harry. Which I kept telling Harry, but he conveniently kept ignoring
know
it.
these specifics, but I feel like it's
because he's a moron. Because he wants a new unipolar world under China.
So the kind of
or even China eventually takes over Russia and then takes over the whole world and implements based Marxist Leninism, patriotism.
The last place that they could go to was Taiwan.
So, again, do you get it so far? Civil War, communists take over, the right-wing nationalists have to flee, and it's over 1 million of them, and they flee to Taiwan, and they're ruled by Chiang Kai-shek.
And China could not take it back because they did not have the naval capacity to do so, since the Republic of China took, like, everything Navy and Air Force-wise away from the PRC. And, of course, America backed them upcoming with the Korean War and all that, so China was not going to risk fighting America and getting nuked, which America threatened to do to China if they did anything to Taiwan.
Yep.
So China, for like the last 60, 70 years, have been forced to back off and fall in line because of threat of American involvement.
To invade Taiwan and crush the deposed leader once and for all. But then war broke out on the Korean peninsula.
And this thing also doesn't acknowledge, because for all we don't know, it's not just Taiwan. Taiwan has to this day, and even more so back then, they actually have control of some islands literally off the coast of China too. It's not just the main island of Taiwan. There's literal islands right now Taiwan controls that's like only a mile or so away from mainland China. Back in the 50s, they had more of them, and part of 1957-58, in the first two Taiwan Strait crisis, China took over a bunch of them. And that's when America threatened to nuke them if they kept doing it. So that's another concern. You got to wonder if maybe in the future China decides, instead of maybe going for Taiwan itself completely, what if we invade like those small islands like right off our coast? Would America or Taiwan do anything about it? Because they really didn't do anything about the times we did 60 years ago.
I don't think they want those little islands. They probably just want to defend the mainland.
Alliance with Chiang Kai-shek's regime and forced Mao to give up his plans for a Taiwan takeover.
From Formosa, Chiang carries on his long and valiant effort to...
So the Americans butt in and make it so that whatever intentions Mao had of taking back Taiwan and making it officially part of China again, it becomes sort of a null and void point. It's like a moot point, because if American might is going to back Taiwan, China goes, look, we want Taiwan, but we can't really militarily take them over without sparking...
And even when they tried, before America tried to get involved, they failed massively, if you didn't hear from History Matters. So China has tried to take over Taiwan. They just failed spectacularly, and now America's going to protect Taiwan if they even try it. So they're kind of like forced to fall in line.
Another gigantic war with world superpowers.
Meet the forces of communism.
Emboldened by America's support, Chiang Kai-shek declared Taiwan as the one true Republic of China and vowed to return to retake.
Yet, historically, Taiwan referred themselves as the true China. That's why the one China policy happened. Historically, the ROC, Republic of China, claimed all of mainland China and Mongolia as originally part of the Chinese Republic. Taiwan doesn't really view that anymore, but that historically was the case when Chiang Kai-shek ruled it. Both the PRC and the ROC viewed themselves as the legitimate China. They both had claims over each other.
The mainland.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so to this point it's already been crazy. Now it gets a little goofy. So now Taiwan is like, well, we're going to take over China. And actually, we are the real China. What?
Yeah. It's a really unusual situation. Everyone on both sides agreed there was only one country called China. They just disagreed what it was. Was it a right-wing country called the Republic of China or a communist country called the People's Republic of China?
Although no longer fighting face-to-face, Mao and Chiang Kai-shek were now in a battle for international recognition and
What's with the bodybuilders? I don't understand.
legitimacy. Initially, Chiang Kai-shek's government held China's seat on the UN Security Council.
Yeah, historically, the ROC, Taiwan, all the way up to 1971 was the original China according to the UN, so they were part of the Security Council, like right now America, UK, France, Russia, and China themselves are in right now, until 1971. Up to 1971, most of the world recognized Taiwan as a legitimate China, but afterwards, then they started recognizing the PRC as the actual China. That's when countries stopped recognizing Taiwan as an actual country.
And was
But they
recognized
still
by
are a
many
country.
Western countries as the only Chinese government.
Wow. You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of, like, Juan Guaido with Venezuela, where we just woke up one day and started pretending, like, yeah, he's the leader of Venezuela. And he objectively wasn't. He just wasn't that. We were like, yeah, nah, he's the real leader of Venezuela. What? That's what they did with Taiwan. They were like, oh no, this is actually the true China, and Chiang Kai-shek is the leader of the true China.
Loser.
The arrogance and the hubris. It's ridiculous.
Our great socialist fatherland is in a bright and splendid morning.
But as Mao's China became of increasing strategic importance to America during the US-Soviet Cold War, Chiang Kai-shek's influence diminished.
Yeah, that's what happened in the 70s.
Yeah.
In 1971, America allowed a UN resolution to recognize Mao's People's Republic as the one and only China. And
So in other words, keep it real. They're just sort of, this was the point where they just sort of acknowledge reality. Like, okay, yes, mainland China is China, and Nixon, was looking to smooth over relations with mainland China.
after years of secret
to try and
talks,
counter the Soviet
in
Union.
1979, Washington shifted diplomatic recognition.
Because although they were communists, the Soviet Union and China were very hostile to each other once Stalin died. They almost started World War III in 1969. They had border skirmishes in the Manchuria area, for God's sake.
Taiwan's capital, Taipei.
And even now, China and Russia are like
frenemies.
Yeah, pretty much.
Mainland
Pretty
would not allow
much.
two Chinas or one China and one Taiwan.
And pretty soon, because of the Russo-Ukraine war, seeing how bad Russia doing it, Russia's got to be China's. Russia's going to be China's puppet eventually.
Insisted on having one China.
Which is what Harry wants. He wants a one world government under China, where China takes over the entire world. The United States of America is a nuke and bombed out wasteland, where the wasteland back in prehistoric times. Europe is ruled by China, as is the rest of the world.
Is both the strongest promise that America still makes to Taiwan, but also it falls a long way short of a full defense treaty and a full promise that America will definitely protect Taiwan no matter what.
So now it's strategic ambiguity. So, like we
still
give them
what
some
we're doing
weapons,
this day.
give them some money, talk them up a little bit, but is there an actual written agreement of we will defend you if need be? No.
There is actually.
America's
So
lack
what
of
if
commitment
it's
led
like
Taiwan to find another way
I
to
think
stand on
it's
its
more
own
like
two feet.
the thing with Austria-Hungary and Germany, where it's when it come to lead up to World War One, where it was we could, but we don't recommend it. They've met, or the demands were reasonable.
Economic growth.
Oh, you're going to attack Serbia?
Taiwan's
Fine.
have already undergone rapid
Alright, we'll attack you, Russia.
In the
Sorry,
1980s,
mate.
its exports boomed.
We just, we
So low-key,
kind
they
of
were
don't
sort
have a
of
choice.
obviously snubbed by
Charge!
China, and then kind of snubbed by the West in a sense. And they were like, "Oh yeah, well if you guys are gonna break up with me, then I'm gonna I'm gonna work on myself, and I'm gonna get better on my own." And they kind of did.
But
They
yeah,
had
America's
just
been
massive
allied with
economic
China,
growth, and you'll see
Taiwan
they
since the
become a
50s. That's
democracy.
why China
Both
hasn't tried to
sides
do
on both
anything with
sides
them
of the
because they
Taiwan
know what's going to
Strait.
happen if they
Taiwan
do.
and China let down
And then in
their
the
barriers.
80s, that's when Taiwan began to democratize, no longer really call themselves the ROC anymore, and now they pretty much refer to themselves as Taiwanese. And although they're independent, they don't want to officially announce independence because China's threatening to attack them if they do so. So right now, thanks to strategic ambiguity, they can be independent without being officially considered or such.
Initially, Taiwanese businesses set up factories on the mainland,
They're,
reaping huge rewards.
in practicality,
But as China's
independent,
economy began to
though
catch
on
up,
paper
leaders
they're
of
a,
Taiwan realized they'd found one way
what is
to
the
break
term,
down Taiwan's
autonomous
resistance to
region.
merging with the mainland. It was the start of a long-term policy to woo Taiwan through economic influence.
So the relations start to, I wouldn't say heal, but start to calm down because they're going to become economically intertwined.
The Chinese government saw that this is a phenomenally
and as historically for like the last few decades, what China's been trying to do with Taiwan to try and have them reunite in the end. But it's not working in China's regard because in the end, Taiwan does not want anything to do with them and they need to accept it.
The economy so
exactly.
integrated that it will be economically suicidal for any government in Taiwan to try to come into a kind of confrontation with China, which will therefore require the government.
Well, that's pretty funny too because it's not Taiwan that's causing a confrontation; it's China.
No.
So it was like sort of a stealth move to be like, this is how we're going to make you part of China again.
And so the Chinese Communist Party suddenly started to drop its kind of implacable hostility to everything to do with Taiwan. You saw direct flights, direct ferries, direct shipping, and a huge interconnection.
But while economic ties tightened, cultural divisions between Taiwan and the mainland deepened. Political reforms in the 1980s led to the birth of the opposition party, the Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP, who supported an independent Taiwan. Just 2 years later, progressive Lee Teng-hui, or Mr. Democracy as he would come to be called, became the island's first Taiwanese-born leader. National Assembly elections in 1991 were hailed as Taiwan's first true democratic elections.
Within a decade, Taiwan became a full-blown true democracy. And people in Taiwan are extremely proud of their democracy, and that is something which helped to define their sense of identity.
Alongside democratization came a growing desire for a separate identity, much to the dismay of leaders in Beijing. In 1996, China used its military might to threaten Taiwan.
The most recent crisis in Taiwan back in the 90s.
They launched these missile tests off the coast of Taiwan to try and frighten the Taiwanese people into not voting for Lee Teng-hui, who was
This part sounds very American, doesn't it? Like, we talk about the virtues of democracy, but then when any country that's relatively under our thumb votes for the people we don't like, then it's like, we overthrow you.
China acting like America. I mean,
just saying here, it's a very American-like move. Well, you know what?
Off.
That's not even fair. It's a very imperialist-like move. You know.
Well, yeah, it is Chinese imperialism.
That's militarism. Imperialism is when the West bombs and nukes every other country that sanctions them for $1 quintillion, overthrows their government and slaughters 1 trillion people. Only the West can be imperialist, and Russian Chinese militarism is good.
Hey, I didn't know I was hearing Harry right now.
That's how China
their view, too much of a kind of pro-Taiwanese figure.
I think it is a very bad mistake on their part to put the impact area so near to Taiwan. I deplore that decision on their part.
America responded with the biggest display of military might in Asia since the Vietnam War. This made China aware of how difficult it would be to stop American forces assisting Taiwan.
Yep, it shows
China's attempts to meddle in
Taiwanese realize that they don't have a modernized military, which they're now working on.
Continued. Despite claims it wanted a peaceful reunification with Taiwan, in 2005 China passed an anti-secession law authorizing the use of force should Taiwan formally declare independence.
Again, very America-like. But of course, it's only imperialism when the West does it.
Intimidate the Taiwanese people, but it does intimidate some people, but it also makes the idea of unification with China all the more unattractive and just kind of plain weird to younger Taiwanese people.
With the younger generation increasingly alienated from China, more recent attempts by Taiwan's government, even to just forge closer economic ties, have met with opposition. In 2014, the Sunflower Movement occupied parliament to protest against a free trade deal with China.
Well, for most people in Taiwan, they think that China has every right to have a one China principle. It just cannot include us. And they.
So, see, now we're at the point where you can see how things evolved over time. Now we're at the point where, you know, Chiang Kai-shek is long gone, and the idea coming out of Taiwan is not, we are the one true China and you are the fake China. Now they're just like, look, we're Taiwan, you're China, but we're a separate thing. We want to stay a separate thing.
Yeah.
Simply will not accept the prospect of being part of a very hard authoritarian Leninist political system, whatever the economic benefits. So up to this point, the Chinese approach of using economic integration to achieve political unification has failed.
Since the 1990s, a growing proportion of people in Taiwan see themselves as Taiwanese rather than Chinese.
Wow, look at that. In 1992, more Taiwanese people viewed themselves as Chinese. And then look at how much that has shifted since China has become a little more bellicose in their approach. Now, look at that. That's crazy. That's off the charts, dog. That's interesting.
These views helped Tsai Ing-wen, the pro-independence DPP candidate,
And by the way,
win election.
Tsai Ing-wen, Taiwan's president, based, progressive as fuck. Makes me wish I had her as president instead of Dementia Joe.
In 2016, as president
Instead of brain dead zombie Joe Brandon,
events 440 miles southwest,
who doesn't even have a brain, has been dead for 2 years and is only being kept alive by and his body is being animated by the dark side of the Force.
And that's another thing too. That's also shows why Taiwan doesn't want anything to do with China. Hong Kong, and I'm sure Macau too. We all saw what happened years ago. What China did to Hong Kong. You really think Taiwan wants to have anything to do with that?
Dozens of people took to the streets of Hong Kong and battled with police to protest.
That's another fascinating story with an incredible history about Hong Kong, somewhat similar to the Taiwan situation. And
China broke all their promises to Hong Kong when the British returned it too. Supposed to respect their autonomy for like 50 years.
It was a stark warning.
Exactly.
The more that China shows its teeth and shows that it's not willing to tolerate even a semi-democracy in a place like Hong Kong, the more that the Taiwanese people think, what kind of promise of autonomy makes any sense for us?
As voluntary unification looks increasingly remote, China has only its military might to fall back on. In 2020, the Chinese government released a propaganda video that appeared to show the Chinese armed forces conducting attacks on the US military base in Guam. It was a sign that China
how
was
big of a
considering
mistake
using
that
force
would be
far
if they
afield
actually did
in order
that.
to prevent America coming to Taiwan.
You remember what happened with Pearl Harbor, do you, China?
Yep.
Especially since you were the victims of Japan. You don't mess with America, because you're going to see what happened. You saw what happened with Japan. The same will happen to you if you fuck with us.
Is America still able to deter China? Does the People's Liberation Army fear that it would lose a war and that America would turn up to defend Taiwan? That's now in real doubt. These are two nuclear-armed countries. It's kind of an unimaginable horror. It should be impossible to imagine this not ending peacefully. But it is also impossible to imagine this Chinese government allowing Taiwan to drift away.
Wow. Okay. So look, there's the gist of it. I mean, yeah, in a sense, you're also rolling the dice and with World War III. You are.
All's in China's
given
court.
the history of it, given how everything's unfolded, given the relationship right now.
Any war can be easily avoided. All China has to do is leave Taiwan alone, and everything is good. It's as simple as that.
Now between China and the U.S., I mean, I think the Russia and U.S. relationship is maybe even more degraded, because now we've even cut off all like economic ties with them, or most economic ties with them. With China, we still have deep economic ties, of course. But this is a dangerous situation, man, and we're playing with fire, and they're playing with fire too. You cannot absolve all responsibility from them either. So look, what's my overall takeaway on the specific Taiwan situation?
Yes.
Well, first of all, there are no easy answers, because clearly you're dealing with people who are very entrenched ideologically.
There is
and they
a very
have strong
simple
opinions
answer.
on both sides of this. My personal take on it is...
Accept the fact Taiwan's independent. It's that easy. That easy.
Look, man, it's been a long time.
Taiwan's independent, go fuck yourself.
Accept they're independent and accept that what you want to have all of like China unified is
Never
never
going to
going to
happen.
happen. Just like Russia needs to accept the fact that the Soviet Union, Russian Empire, whatever you want, is never going to happen. You need to accept it and go, oh, okay. Just like we had to force Italy, Germany, and Japan in World War II to stop being a genocidal militaristic empires and accept them for the pacifist democratic countries that they are, just like the British had to accept that they're no longer an empire forever. You guys need to accept the fact that you're not going to get what you want ever, so know your place.
Wild.
Yep.
Taiwan at this point is very clearly its own thing with its own culture, and you have to sort of respect that. Now, the path of least resistance is what? Sort of to stay on the current track, which is, you know, Taiwan claims they're Taiwan and they're kind of independent.
Well, they don't claim they're Taiwan. They just don't claim independence because they don't want China to possibly attack them. They just try to be like strategic ambiguity about it. But in reality, they are independent.
Countries recognize their independence and, you know, trade with them as such, treat them as such. But China still sort of claims like, no, you're actually still part of us, bro. Even at the Olympics, they don't call Taiwan, they call it Chinese Taipei.
Yep.
So
mention that.
Sort of the path of least resistance is just whatever the situation is right now, however unbalanced and weak and feeble it is, it's like the least bad of all bad options. So if you can sort of keep the balancing act in place,
which is the case still.
Is most
Pelosi's
likely
visit does not change
to give
American
us
policy
the
on
most peace, if that makes sense. So, I mean, it's a difficult situation, man. It's a difficult situation because China's got way more power, way more money. They're expansionist. And so as a result of that, they have more sway on the global scene. So
not really, because most of the world hates China.
Like, it matters. Taiwan is obviously relatively small in comparison. But
yeah, to compare, if you get an idea, Taiwan has a similar population to Australia.
And also,
so that gives you an idea.
And remember what we saw with Ukraine when Russia attacked them. Ukraine put up one hell of a resistance. And here's a whole bunch of things that are on Taiwan's side compared to Ukraine. One, they're separated by a 100-mile ocean, whereas Ukraine was right on the border of Russia. Chinese have a navy that amphibian land. Taiwan has been prepared for 70 years. They are not going to give up that easily. Two, Taiwan is a giant mountain like Japan, pretty much. Almost the whole entire thing is a mountain. It's so mountainous that the eastern part of Taiwan, if China actually did attack them, they'd probably be largely safe for most of the attack. It's the western part, because China really cannot get past that mountain unless they do invasions from the other side, because the mountain part of China is huge.
They have to do a full encirclement.
Yeah. And
before
also,
they can even really invade.
And also, most importantly, unlike Ukraine, Taiwan is allied with America. So if China does attack Taiwan, they're going to have to deal with America getting involved, whereas Ukraine, that was not the case whatsoever. So, China, remember, the ball's in your court. Any sort of conflict can easily be avoided. All you have to do is leave Taiwan alone and stop viewing them as part of you, and everything is good. It's that simple. You have to drop your entire view on a situation like that.
Maintaining the status quo and having most of the world recognize Taiwan as its own thing, and effectively treating them as their own thing, and giving them like this semi-autonomous status where China still claims you're part of us, but they act independently. That's the least bad thing that I can see. I know it's not a clean answer, but anything else would result in much more turmoil. So anyway, that's my take on that. Now, in terms of Nancy Pelosi visiting, what's my take on that? Look, we already have so many crises around the world right now, and you guys don't even need me to say that. It's obvious. It's plain as day. The Russia and Ukraine war is one thing. Obviously, climate change is another thing. The rapid decline of America as a superpower is another. We have all these problems. And Nancy Pelosi chooses this moment to stir up a crisis?
Yeah, it's not necessarily the smartest thing, but for all of you who didn't know, she actually was considering this back in April, but for some reason it didn't happen until this month. Now, I don't know if 4 months in the past would have made any differences, but there was that possibility.
Stir up a scandal? Now, you might say, well, yeah, but it's the fault of China because they're getting mad when it's just a fucking visit, so get over it. They're being thugs here. I agree with you about all that.
Exactly. Because in the end, here's the thing. Regardless if Pelosi was right or wrong to go there, in the end, it's her choice, and it's Taiwan's choice that they want to accept her. So, China, go piss off.
But if we know that that's going to be the reaction, why would we shove a stick in their eye and manifest that into reality? Look, I'm not claiming that China isn't sort of being a bully and a thug. And
they are. It's very American in this.
Or whatever.
Yep.
I think that's all true. Since America is the axiom of evil,
America is the axiom of evil, I think that's all true. Since America is the axiom of evil, I think that's all true. Since America is the axiom of evil, I think that's all true. Since America is the axiom of evil, I think that's all true. Since America is the axiom of evil, I think that's all true. Since America is the axiom of evil, I think that's all true. Since America is the axiom of evil, I think that's all true. Since America is the axiom of evil, I think that's all true. Since America is the axiom of evil, I think that's all true. Since America is the axiom of evil, I think that's all true. Since America is the axiom of evil, I think that's all true. Since America is the axiom of evil, I think that's all true. Since America is the axiom of evil, I think that's all true. Since America is the axiom of evil, I think that's all true. Since America is the axiom of evil, I think that's all true. Since America is the axiom of evil, I think that's all true. Since well, maybe this would actually get through a little bit to the rest of the... Honestly, to the rest of the left, just about.
Yeah, you would hope, but Harry's fully entrenched in this crap, remember?
It's just wildly unnecessary to do something like this.
Doorknob tards are entrenched on their side, that they want a unipolar world under China, and the US to be a nuked and radioactive wasteland back in prehistoric times. And the Vorshits want the US to blow China into the stratosphere.
The other crises and so many other problems, and you're going to spark a serious situation as a result of this. And I already told you, it is a serious situation. Because now we have Chinese cyber attacks on the Taiwan government. Now we have live fire military exercises completely surrounding Taiwan. Now we have, trade sanctions against Taiwan from China. Was all of that fucking worth it? Was it worth it? Now, look. Now, here's where we get to the motivations and the intentions of Nancy Pelosi, because I think she even said something like, I want to do something historic. So she's trying to be like, I'm a historic figure fighting for democracy
Pelosi,
and
you're
the
a
West
nobody,
over
so shut
Chinese
the fuck up.
aggression and authoritarianism. I'm sure in her head, that's how she's conceptualizing this.
How about you resign like you said you weren't going to run in this year?
Just fuck off forever. Resign and fuck off, you stupid
She's a trillion years old.
bitch cunt witch.
Some would say her legislative accomplishments are phenomenal. I wouldn't at all.
Every single sexist slur there is towards Pelosi.
That's what she is. That's how she's going to go down in history. Trying to get down in the history books is
I do sort of agree with the doorknobs on is that we can, to some degree, we can be bigoted towards neolibs and Nazis and neocons. Partly because it triggers the shit out of them and makes them look horrible, but also because it's actually being
which is definitely something that's a good thing.
Somewhat,
of course, Pelosi and her
somewhat bigoted towards them is good belittling tool to damage their reputation.
Another thing too is another reason for Pelosi maybe visiting is because her spouse has business ties with Taiwan, and for all of you who don't know, Taiwan is a major player when it comes to computer semiconductors. So there's probably a corruption angle to this too, which I would not be surprised if that's the case.
Are personally profiting off of that
because she's also corrupt. And
to have
she's gone there to spread corruption, her corrupt terrorism to Taiwan
in a show of strength to be like, we're going to defend you come hell or high water. How much of that is also spurred, consciously or subconsciously, by her own personal financial investments? Because again, they are the main player when it comes to microchip manufacturing. And so, you got a lot to lose if China invades Taiwan. But by the way, I think the more important point is, I think it makes a sort of hostile takeover of Taiwan more likely that because Nancy Pelosi did this. I don't think it makes it less likely. I think it makes it more likely. I know maybe in her mind she thinks it's the opposite. If I go and show American strength and go to Taiwan and visit them, that that'll make China back off or back down. I don't agree. Because look, now China knows, having looked at the situation with Russia and Ukraine, the way the world will react if they go and do something like that. And what they know is there isn't going to be a hot war between the U.S. because there can't be a hot war between the U.S.
That was already stated from the very start that America would not attack Russia if they attacked Ukraine. That was the exact opposite thing is the case with Taiwan and Ukraine. Yeah, everyone said before we're not going to get involved militarily if Russia invades Ukraine. But America said from even Biden over like the last year or so at least 3 times, if Taiwan does anything to China, if China does anything to Taiwan, we're going to intervene. So it's the exact opposite.
That's because we're talking about nuclear armed superpowers here. So what's going to happen? A bunch of sanctions and changes in the direction in terms of trade policy, and
which is something China is trying their best to avoid too, because they do want to overtake America, but they're not going to be able to easily do that if all the world's major economic players are against them, which is already the case right now. So the odds of them hopefully not doing anything in Taiwan are less likely if that's their main goal. Because right now, the only thing that they're going to do, just like, hey, you know what? Hey, maybe they'll screw up like Russia. Because remember, like one of the main goals for Russia attacking Ukraine was to stop the expansion of NATO. Well, the attack on Ukraine has helped expand NATO in Finland, Sweden. So,
who
knows? Maybe they're just that stupid.
they're probably at the point where they can weather that
A
storm.
lot are
And if anything,
like
the U.S.
that.
would only further isolate itself in a reaction, like, can weather that storm. And if anything, the U.S. would only further isolate itself in a reaction.
No,
like,
Kyle, no, it would be the exact opposite. Everyone would side with America on this. Like, come on. Like, everyone side with America on the Ukraine issue. Everyone's going to side on Taiwan on this. China will not get out of this at all scot-free. Best case scenario for them, they're going to get the exact same treatment as Russia got right now with Ukraine. All those sanctions and political isolation. But there is no situation where America is going to look bad to the world in this situation. Just no.
That with China.
Exactly.
And so maybe they are planning on doing that hostile takeover of Taiwan, which, don't get it twisted, on its own merits, is brutal and thuggish and illegal and wrong and bad.
And they're going to probably struggle massively like Russia's doing right now with Ukraine.
Helps facilitate that.
Because Taiwan is also more advanced than Ukraine, and they've been planning for decades, like I said, and of course they got America's backing. Like, I think overall, outside of like some nuclear war, which China really can't do much of a nuclear war like America and Russia can, because they have nowhere near the nuclear weapons that America has.
Yeah, they've got like a handful.
Yeah, and also most of their nuclear weapons can't even really reach America either. At most, they can maybe reach like Guam or Hawaii, but they really can't reach the continental U.S. So, nuclear-wise, they're not really a threat to us. We are to them, though. The main nuclear threat would be America and Russia still. But yeah. Shit, now what's I going to say? Oh yeah, like I said, outside of that, if it's just a conventional war, even if America doesn't necessarily get involved, I think China actually might do worse against Taiwan than Russia did against Ukraine because of all the problems they have to deal with.
Yeah.
Sooner. And I think what Nancy Pelosi is doing here, raising tensions, escalating, is going to lead us down that path. That's not saying it's going to be her fault, but she could play a role in making it happen sooner and pissing them off more.
She's not helping the situation.
Sort of stirring the pot in a...
She's not helping, but in the end, it is true. It's none of China's business what Pelosi goes to or if Taiwan accepts
reckless
whoever.
way. So
both things are true.
I understand the argument of like, look, she has a right to go wherever the fuck she wants to go and she can do that. It's true. But there's also consequences to that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you weigh the pros and cons, it's very clear to walk away saying, this is just stupid. This is just dumb.
Yeah, it's not
There's no
necessarily
reason
a
to do
smart
this.
thing
There's
for
no
her to do
logical
that.
reason to do this. And so that's where we are right now. Definitely shouldn't have done it. And just adding another crisis on top of 47 other crises. And I think that's a serious concern. Ever since
So what do you got to say about that long-ass video?
Very interesting on the history. A lot of that I already knew.
So did I.
There are a few extra details that were interesting, but yeah, like the general picture I already knew. But yeah, it's quite interesting. And also, mold harder, China. We know you can't take it.
Yep. And also, remember, do not mess with Taiwan. You saw what happened with Russia attacking Ukraine. That, at the minimum, is what you're going to experience if you deal with Taiwan. But like I said, in your case, you're going to have a worse outcome, I think, even if you're strong with Russia, because 100-mile wide ocean.
Yeah, but also because the US, being the US, will probably go on to invade mainland China.
Well, they probably wouldn't be able to do that. But there's another thing China has to consider. They have a massive flaw that America doesn't have to deal with. They're not self-sufficient when it comes to energy like oil, if you know that. So, and they get most of their oil from shipping from like the Middle East into the Malaccan Strait and all that. So all America has to do is just blockade China.
That's it.
All they have to do is just blockade China's coastline, which America's Navy is more than capable to do that, and China is economically destroyed because they won't be able to import oil. And Russia and land connections from the Middle East will not be enough. That happens when you're not self-sufficient like America is. Oof. That's why you don't mess with us. You should learn. And like I said, don't you even dare try to attack America either, China. You saw what happened with America when Pearl Harbor happened, when we saved your ass. So don't fuck with us, and more importantly, don't fuck with Taiwan, and nothing is going to happen. The ball is in your court. Just leave them alone, and everything will be good. Alright, so now with that out of the way, after 2 hours, we are finally done, and we'll wrap it up here, guys. So, see you guys next time.
See you next time.